Dan. Hi, how are you? I don't know why I've had problems with that. I've never had problems with that. I see the meeting slide, and I can mute and unmute and start the video and all that. Everything seems to be working, but I can't get, and my computer audio is on at the top, but I can't hear anything.
Oh, Carol, this is Ashley. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear her now. Ashley, are you on the?
Yes, we are on the Zoom call.
I hear her. Thank you very much, Dan.
And Carol, you are not on mute. Just want to let you know.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Good morning, Ashley. Jim Swanson.
Thank you, Jim. Good morning, everyone. This is Ashley. I just wanted to do a quick roll call and make sure I know which board members are on the call. Right now I have Superintendent Hoffman.
Good morning.
Good morning. Carol Crockett, Justin, Mary Ellen, Jim Swanson, Hans. Are there any other board members that I'm missing?
Eric Twist.
Eric, thank you. Do I have Matt or Rachel Yanoff on the call? Okay. Mary Ellen, I believe Matt Mason and Rachel Yanoff are going to be joining us later, but at this point you do have a quorum.
And since I stay unmuted most of the meeting, I just want to apologize to everyone in advance. My son is home with me doing school, and so he will do his best to be quiet in the background. So, all right. Well, then I say we can go ahead and get started. And so we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you, Ashley. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, if we could go ahead and move on to the roll call, please.
President Lee?
Here.
Vice President Close?
Here.
Superintendent Hoffman?
Here.
Dr. Crockett? Mr. Mason? Ms. Rice?
Present.
Mr. Swanson?
Here.
Mr. Twist?
Here.
Ms. Yano? President Lee, you have a quorum.
Great, thank you so much. All right, moving on to item D, Superintendent's Report. Superintendent Hoffman.
Thank you, and good morning again.
So thank you, President Lee and board members. I first want to acknowledge the different native lands that we occupy today. My own home sits on O'odham and Hohokam lands. Last week, we had a big announcement. The Arizona Department of Health Services released public health benchmarks for school leaders to work in conjunction with county health departments to determine when it is safe for students, teachers, and staff to return to in-person instruction. Alongside many district and charter leaders, I advocated for these benchmarks to inform decisions for reopening. Arizona is one of the first states to develop comprehensive metrics, and I believe our framework will be a model for other states. The public health benchmarks released provide our school communities clear thresholds and promote discussions around local context. The metrics are aligned to the roadmap, which describes 3 main learning scenarios. We have distance learning with on-site support services, which is what our schools are doing right now. There's a description of hybrid learning, and I define hybrid learning as having a decreased number of students in the classroom. So it could be 50-50 in the classroom and 50% learning at home. It could be 40-60, but having a significantly decreased number of students in the classroom and another group of students learning at home. The third learning scenario is in-person teacher-led instruction, which is what we would consider traditional, everyone back in the classroom, 25-30 students for more of a traditional type of learning environment. For schools to consider hybrid instruction, so the decreased number of students in the classroom, the Department of Health Services recommends that they meet all 3 benchmarks. So just to go over those real quick, and of course, there's a lot of details about this on their website and on our website, but the 3 benchmarks are, first, a 2-week decline in the number of cases or 2 weeks with new case rates below 100 per 100,000. The second benchmark is 2 weeks with less than 7% positivity rate. And the third benchmark is 2 weeks with hospital visits due to COVID-like illnesses below 10%. To provide in-person instruction, so again, meaning all the kids back in the classroom, there are more stringent benchmarks, including 2 weeks with less than 5% positivity rate for that full in-person instruction. The Department of Health Services released a new dashboard on their website for school reopening, where you can click on each county to see if they're meeting the benchmarks, the 3 benchmarks. And currently there is no county in Arizona that is meeting all of the benchmarks for either in-person or hybrid learning. I believe it is critical that our schools follow these benchmarks. And my hope is that these public health metrics are grounding for our schools and families as it sets clear goals for our communities. I think it's phenomenal that Arizona is one of the first states to use research and data to drive decision-making about reopening schools. And again, for more information, there's a lot more detail of that. It's on both DHS's and ADE's website. To discuss some of the executive orders, because it's been a while since I've provided a report. So we also have had, Governor Ducey has issued several executive orders since the last time we all met. And I wanted to provide some updates on how ADE has interpreted and is planning to help operationalize those executive orders. First, we recently released an FAQ that provides answers to the key pieces of the all 3 executive orders, including how those executive orders affect school finance and issues like taking attendance. One other major component is the on-site support services, which I realize has been a challenge for many of our schools to plan for. Last week, we released guidance and an overview of this requirement. The guidance and overview cover what types of services should be prioritized and requirements to notify certain student populations about these services. In the case of a local outbreak confirmed by both county and state health departments, there is also now a waiver application to be exempt for the on-site targeted support services requirement. All of these companion documents, as well as the waiver request form, can be found on ADE's COVID-19 page. I encourage all schools to review these documents and the waiver process and to be in frequent communication with local county health officials. On Thursday of this week, ADE, alongside the Arizona School Board Association and school leaders, will host a webinar regarding the on-site, the targeted services requirement. And I encourage you to sign up for this webinar through ASBA's website. Another exciting update is over the summer, I launched the Technology Task Force, which is comprised of school and tech industry leaders. We have our 4th meeting tomorrow, which is very exciting. We estimate, based on data available, that there's roughly 200,000 students in Arizona who do not have adequate internet connectivity at home. And the main purpose of the task force is to address technology needs of our students and families, and to find innovative solutions, including strengthening private and public partnerships. And last, I wanted to provide some updates on resources for schools and teachers. So one new resource is that last week, ADE's Social Wellness Committee released social emotional learning competencies, resources, and a funding guide, and a social emotional learning pledge for schools and organizations. This work has been a result of collaboration between Arizona and the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning to provide these types of resources for our schools. And of course, the social emotional supports are more critical than ever right now. And a bit of positive news, within 24 hours of releasing the social emotional learning resources, ADE received 64 pledges. So check out if your school is among those, or if you would like to sign the pledge. ADE is also providing free professional development in social emotional learning and trauma-informed practices. There are a variety of sessions offered, all at no cost for educators, thanks to the CARES Act federal dollars, the federal funding, and the social emotional competencies and resources, including this professional development series, can all be found on our K-12 standards website. And last, another exciting announcement from last week, ADE announced a partnership with ASU, Helios, and Governor Ducey to provide every educator in Arizona professional development through what's this new program called the Virtual Teacher Learning Institute. And schools can register for this training so that all of their educators can adopt new digital, blended, hybrid, and tech-rich industrial practices. So lots of exciting things happening, and that concludes my report.
Thank you, Superintendent Hoffman. I appreciate that. Board members, were there any questions for Superintendent Hoffman? Okay. All right, and moving on, and I did miss some housekeeping rules, so I'm going to go ahead and put those in right before the executive director's report, Ashley. So just a reminder to board members to stay muted, and after each agenda item, we'll go through the roll call to see if any member has comment or question, and make sure to state your name before you speak. Charters that are on the agenda today, please stay muted until the item is considered. We will ask if the charter is available, and if so, the charter can unmute themselves at the time. The general public is viewing the meeting via live stream or have called in via Zoom and will be muted. All right. Item E, Executive Director's Report. Ashley.
Good morning, President Lee, Superintendent Hoffman, and board members. For my update today, I wanted just to quickly go through the reopening of schools and where the board is at. I know Superintendent Hoffman just went through all of the great guidance that the Department of Education has put out to assist our schools. The only thing I really have to update our schools on and board members is just a reminder that the distance learning plans must be submitted to our board by the end of this week. And additionally, there are requirements within the Executive Order 51 that board staff will start working to get. We did put a recommended deadline for schools to submit the notification and communication information within that executive order to our board by September 1st. This is a recommended timeline. just to assist schools and gain that information to us so that we don't have to bother them later on when we go ahead and do our evaluation of that distance learning plan and also the requirements in Executive Order 51. Rachel will go over that process later on the agenda, but just wanted again to send a reminder out to our schools about the August 14th deadline for the DLPs to be submitted, and then that recommended deadline of September 1st to get the additional reporting requirements to us. With that, President Leanne, that is all I have to report.
Thank you. Ashley, I have a question, and this Superintendent Hoffman, you might be able to answer this as well, or I'm not sure where do schools go if they have questions about the health report from Arizona Department of Health Services? Because, for example, I know some schools in Coconino County have met 2 of the 3 benchmarks, and according to the report, there seems to be a discrepancy where moderate for percent positivity is between 5 and 10%, but yet 2 places on the report say that it's 7%, and they'd be moderate if they had fallen into the 5 to 10% category, which means that they'd be good for hybrid learning already at this point, according to the benchmark. So there just seems to be a discrepancy of where moderate falls for the percent passing. Where can schools get clarity on that?
President Lee, I can explain that, and then for additional questions through our department, any questions where you're not sure who to contact, an email can be sent to our constituent services, which is questions@azed.gov for any kind of general questions. But so specifically to that question, so the moderate range is 5 to 10%, but so currently we're all, of course, higher than that, or most, I guess you're saying that in this county that they're within the 10%. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, for the last 2 weeks they were at 8.9 and 9.1, so they would have hit the moderate.
Yeah. So DHS did set the threshold at 7%, which they kind of intentionally put in the middle of the moderate range, because what they didn't want to happen was like a yo-yo effect where if schools meet the threshold and then they bump back up out of it again, that they didn't want to see a pattern of like open, close, open, close. And so the idea is when they meet the 7% threshold and they open, then they can stay in the moderate range all the way up to 10% and not have to close again. Does that make more sense?
It does, yes. Thank you for the clarification. I appreciate it. Yeah, and I just wanted to take a moment to our charter operators, teachers, administrators, and just our community as a whole. I really just want to say thank you. You've all worked tirelessly over the last several months to ensure that all charter students continued learning and growing as both scholars and individuals under such uncertain and trying circumstances. Your efforts really have not gone unnoticed. My fellow board members and I are so proud to be a part of the charter community, and I want you all to know just how grateful that I personally am that we can count on you to do right by our charter students. As the academic year begins, the board is fully aware that there are still numerous questions and concerns regarding the reopening of schools. Our number one priority at this time is to support all of you in every way that we can to ensure continued high quality education for our students. The Arizona Department of Education, Governor's Office, and Department of Health Services have released resources and guidance to help schools prepare for this academic year, which we all know will look very different than in years past. The governor's executive orders require that this board, to ensure that certain requirements in the executive orders are met, that schools consider the benchmarks for reopening, and to evaluate the charter's implementation of their distance learning plans. School choice was founded on the principle that there cannot be a one-size-fits-all approach to schools, and the board is aware that the same founding principle applies to how our schools will reopen this school year. Every school community has different needs, which will determine what their reopening process looks like. I'm confident in our charter's ability to make the most appropriate choices for their community, whether that is offering instruction in person, hybrid, or online. Just thank you, everyone, again, for your continued dedication to the education of Arizona charter students. And as one charter community, we will work together to tackle any obstacles that come our way. All right. Any questions for Ashley board members before we move on? All right. Moving on to item F, call to the public. It's my understanding that no public comments were received. I always like to just double check, Ashley, just to confirm we do not have any public comments. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you, Ashley. All right, moving on to item G, the consent agenda. Was there any board members that would like to remove something from the consent agenda?
President Lee, this is Jim Swanson. I would like to remove items 4, B, C, and F.
B, C, and F. Okay, we will remove items 4, B, C, and F. And so we will go ahead and take item. Oh, yes, go ahead, Dr. Crockett.
And I would like to remove item 4A. Ashley, thank you.
And Dr. Crockett, did you have a question about 4A, or were you just wanting to recuse yourself from?
I want to recuse myself from that.
Awesome. Great. And if it's all right with you, can I recuse yourself from the entire motion, and then we can take it as one motion together, that what's left? Is that okay with you?
Correct.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, so is there a motion for items, let me make sure I get this right, and Ashley, you can correct me if I'm wrong, please, for A, E, F, and G. Oh, excuse me, for A, E, and G.
We do need to include D as well. So it would be
Thank you.
for A, for D, for E, and for G.
Perfect. Sorry about that. Thanks. All right. Is there a motion for that?
Before Ashley needs to include items 1, 2, and 3 also, right?
Oh, yes, it does.
Yes. Okay. Do we have a motion?
This is Hans. Do you want me to repeat that whole? I move to approve consent agenda items 1, 2, 3, 4, A, D, E, and G.
Second.
Second. Thank you. And is there? Sorry. Alexis, can you?
Vice President Close,
Aye.
Superintendent Hoffman,
Aye.
Dr. Crockett,
Aye.
Mr. Mason,
Aye.
Ms. Rice,
Aye.
Mr. Swanson,
Aye.
Mr. Twist,
Aye.
President Lee.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
I'm so sorry, Alexis. Mr. Crockett, I believe that was the motion that you were to recuse yourself on.
Oh, I apologize. I so apologize. What shall I do?
Ashley, do we have to take the motion again, or can we mark?
Yeah, Vicky, I think we need to take the motion again.
Okay.
I apologize.
That's okay.
Yeah, just go ahead and redo the motion.
Okay. Hans, if you'll redo the motion for us, please.
Sure.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. I move to approve consent agenda items 1, 2, 3, 4, A, 4, B, 4, E, and 4, G.
Thank you, Hans. I'll go ahead and second. Alexis, if you could do the roll call, please.
Vice President Close,
Aye.
Superintendent Hoffman,
Aye.
Mr. Mason,
Aye.
Ms. Rice,
Aye.
Mr. Swanson,
Aye.
Mr. Twist,
Aye.
President Lee.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so if we could go to amendment item 4B, it looks like it's the first one. Happy Valley.
President Lee, if I could just make a statement on the 3 that I asked to remove.
Please.
I just want to raise this continuing issue that we've had and just talk about it of board member control and the families and by related parties, and what we're going to do to control that and modify it and manage that process. The 3 of these that I asked to be pulled have that instance. So I'd just like to talk about it and see where we go, and then we can make a motion, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And I echo your concerns as well. You know, I believe that best practice would be to allow board staff to work with the schools where the majority is related. And then we can table these three and have them come back when they've presented a different board makeup that is unrelated. You know, that would be my suggestion because I agree. Are there any other board members who have thoughts or opinions on the matter?
Actually, this is Matt Mason. I've been talking about this issue now for I think a couple years on the board, and I think it's a significant one. It's one that I would encourage almost the association and any of the other support organizations to look into, to be advising the charters on proper board protocol, and specifically with respect to family members serving on the same boards. We're seeing some schools where you have a majority of family members serving on a board, and they're holding, as a result of that, every night when they all go for dinner, they're subject to open meeting laws. Outside of that, nonprofits are regulated by the IRS, and all kinds of problems occur when there are related board members, especially when they're voting on compensation. So I'm not sure what our board should be doing about it, other than on a case-by-case basis looking at it. I understand there might be exceptional circumstances, maybe for rural schools or something like that. But for the most part, I mean, I think that we should, generally speaking, hold school boards accountable to having a diverse board, and ensuring that especially when they're voting on compensation, or even when they're just meeting, that they're complying with federal and state law. So those are my thoughts on it. I think you know, to announce you know, some kind of policy right now wouldn't necessarily be fair, but maybe if we could direct board staff to look into setting some kind of requirement here, getting feedback from charters, I think that would be good. You know, those are some of my thoughts on it, but this has been an ongoing issue for a long time now, and it seems like we consistently have to remind schools to clean up their act, and it might be better if we were to have some kind of policy so that around this issue, so that we don't continue to see it over and over again.
Yeah, Ashley, this is Eric Twist. Just along those same lines that Mr. Mason's discussing, I do think that staff could remind the operator that the board is very unlikely to approve these charters under the conditions of multiple family members serving on the board. So, I mean, we've again, as Matt states, you know, we've been talking about this for a while. I do think that staff could point them to the IRS regulations once again that prohibit such activity, and I do think that certainly I think some you know, maybe some support from the association could be helpful to these charters. But I you know, short of a policy, I think at the very least, actually a best practice that board staff is just going back and saying, listen, you're best not to put this on the agenda under these conditions because you're gonna levy upon yourself this very discussion.
Yeah, and Ashley, is there a way, I agree with everyone and think that maybe, you know, best practice could probably be the way to go, exactly what Mr. Twist stated. Is there a way that when they're submitting this request, that there was a question? I thought we had talked about potentially putting a question on there that says, you know, how many of the parties are related? Because right now we're just catching parties with the same last name, and that doesn't necessarily mean that other charters are getting by with the same scenario, but just with different last names, right? And so is there a way to update that as well, or look into adding that question?
Yes, President Lee, we have gone ahead and updated the forms so that going forward, we will have the schools notifying us if they are related, even if their last names are different. You're absolutely correct, Kim. And with the comments being said previously, I am happy to work with the schools prior to their requests being approved or being placed on the agenda. And will and can, if it's the board's will, look into putting together some additional policy or guidance to schools as well.
Great, that would be perfect, Ashley. So let's go ahead and I want to make sure we give a chance for the charters to speak that are on the agenda, because I'm sure they're here. So is there a charter representative from Happy Valley East? So we're on item 4B. And I believe they are actually also, Happy Valley is also 4C. So we'll take 4B and 4C together. If there's a representative, feel free to unmute yourself. We'll wait a minute. I know it can take a minute with technology.
Mary Ellen, maybe just remind people that it's *6 if they're on the phone. That can confuse people.
Oh, absolutely. I would not have known that myself, actually. So it's *6 if you are on the phone. Thank you so much. Okay, Ashley.
This is Rachel. I do see the representative listed on here. The representative is Glenn Gaddy. It does say he's on an iPad. I don't have the control to unmute him, but perhaps Dan would be able to do that.
Okay. We'll give it another minute, and then if he can get himself unmuted, we can.
Hi, am I on now?
Yes, you are.
Oh,
Would
sorry.
you for the record, please?
My name is Glenn Gaddy, and I'm the director at Happy Valley School, Peoria, and Happy Valley School East in Santan Valley.
Great, thank you for being here. So do you have any comments in regard to you know, what you're trying to do with your board members?
Yes, well, yeah, I had board members that were on there and have recently passed away. This is the first time I've had to do any major board member changes in years. And I have a couple of reasons why I set it up that way, but I can see that there are concerns from the board members. So I will be glad to look at everything and adjust it if we need to.
Great. Yeah. Do you think you'd be able to find some unrelated parties, you know, to add onto the, it looks like the corporate board is 2/3 related parties.
Yes, I probably can do that. Well, I had an incident years ago, over 20 years ago, where members of that board literally took the school over. And even though we put the effort to get it started, hired everybody, it literally got taken away. So I'm sure that there are probably some things legally that we could do to prevent some of those items. And so I'm willing to take a look at the whole thing. So
great. Okay. Thank you so much for being here today.
You're welcome.
All right. And it looks like the other school was item 4F, Little Lamb Community School. Do we have a representative from Little Lamb Community School now? If you can unmute yourself, and it is star.
It's under Jocelyn Mikey, but Jodine Tryon is here.
Yes. Great. All right. Well, welcome. Is there anything you'd like to say, you know, in regards to your board structure?
Do you have questions about it? Our structure. Pardon?
Yeah, so the concern is that 3, if I'm looking at it right, 3 out of the 5, so 2/3 of the members your governance are related, and yeah, of the governance are related. Are you guys able to find some parties that make it not a majority related board?
Well, yes, we could. My husband is an attorney with the Attorney General's office. So we discussed this problem, and he didn't think it was an issue. But I understand the open meeting law, and we are very cautious about that. So we certainly abide by it.
Great, thank you. So, board members, and
well, let's talk.
Yeah,
let's talk through that. I mean, I don't know that it's not that I don't. By the way, this is Eric. It's not that I think the operator is being dishonest. Of course, I just want to be clear, but I think just as a matter of procedure, I'm not sure the board in its position should simply be comfortable with that level of testimony. So I do think, although I'll defer to Mr. Swanson, who brought this up about his sentiments on this, but it seems to me that again, as a matter of procedure, it may require us to dig a little deeper.
Okay.
Eric, if I may, I sort of thought that when President Lee first responded to my request that maybe tabling these and then having the staff talk to the schools and come up with a solution. I don't know. I understand that the operator felt like maybe there was no issue, but I think there remains an issue. And I think with the amount of taxpayer dollars that are going into these schools, I think we are, as a board, I feel like it's our obligation to make sure that we research this and come down on one side or the other, because this issue, as Mr. Mason has stated, comes up over and over again. And I think that there are significant issues with it. So if tabling is a solution and then having the staff come back, perhaps we could do that.
Sounds right.
Okay. Yeah, and I believe then that'll give them, we don't do a no vote, so they don't have to resubmit and go through that practice, but it sounds like everybody's willing to get some unrelated parties on their board to, make it correct. So if we can table it, that'll give them the opportunity to fix the issue and then come back and hopefully, just remain on the consent agenda. So we do need a motion for the table. Hans, are you able to give us that motion?
Should be pretty easy. I move to table items G4, B, C, and F.
And is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Alexis, if you could do the roll call, please.
President Close?
Aye.
Superintendent Hoffman?
Aye.
Mr. Mason? Mr. Mason? Ms. Rice?
Aye.
Mr. Swanson?
Aye.
Mr. Twist?
Aye.
President Lee?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Great, thank you. And then Ashley, just to be clear, I don't think this has to be in the motion, but you guys go ahead and work and maybe talk to us at the next meeting of just some best practice that we can put in place, or guidance to charters, like what Mr. Twist said, of just saying, hey, this will get pulled from the consent agenda, if this is not up to date.
Presently, yes, I will go ahead and start working with the schools that were on the agenda and then work on putting out guidance to schools as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay. All right, moving on. It looks like we are on item H, charter amendments. Ms. Rachel, it looks like we have CPLC Community Schools up first. Rachel, go for it.
All right. President Lee, Superintendent, and board members, CPLC Community Schools has submitted an amendment request to increase its enrollment cap from 75 to 200 for fiscal year 2021. The charter holder stated that the increase is to expand the academic services provided by CPLC, which will allow the continued support of the diverse and high needs community they serve through their alternative school model. The charter holder does not meet the staff recommendation criteria because Envision High School does not perform at or above the average performance of nearby alternative schools in ELA and math. And the charter holder is currently operating at 65% of its current enrollment cap of 75. Additionally, past enrollment growth trends are inconsistent and do not indicate that the charter holder will exceed its enrollment cap in the next 3 years.
Thank you, Rachel. Is there a representative from CPLC Community? If so, if you could unmute yourself, introduce yourself, and if you have any statements.
Hey, Madam President, this is Eric Twist. I'm going to recuse myself from this one, but I want to state clearly Great Hearts and CPLC don't have a formal relationship, but just to be beyond reproach, we have discussed partnerships in the recent past, and we may continue to discuss partnerships in the future. And so just to be super careful here, I'm going to recuse myself from this one.
I appreciate that, Mr. Twist. Thank you so much.
Good morning. My name is Lori Mejia, Superintendent of CPLC Community Schools.
Welcome, Lori. Do you have anything you'd like to add or anything you'd like to say about this charter amendment?
Yes. So I just want to reiterate that we are an alternative school located in a high needs area with high mobility. We would like to expand our services to be able to support an increased number of youth in our community. It has been challenging to be able to financially sustain school operations with an enrollment cap of 75. We are fully committed and prepared and have the capacity to continue to provide needed supports to our students in a holistic manner with the continued support of our community. And I think that it's important to note that we do have a current pre-enrollment list of 80 students. And so we would really like to support our students, and it would be very difficult with our enrollment cap as of right now of 75. And I also think that it's important to note that because there's such a high mobility in the area, it is not realistic to base our student number on ADM of 49 as it was last year, because in reality, we serviced over 100 students.
Thank you for that feedback. Board members, are there any questions? I do have a few questions. Could you speak to your, so just looking at the packet, there's no reporting, or I'm assuming that it means that it's at 0%. I'm not sure which, for the ELL, SPED, and FRL percent for your school. It looks like within, the 2 and 5 mile radius, it's 85%, but there's no data for your school, or is it 0? I guess I'm not sure which. If you could provide clarification on that for your ELL population, your SPED population, and your FRL population.
I'm gonna have Gisa Mares speak to that because she's more familiar with the data. Gisa?
Hi, good morning, everyone. Are you alluding to just the ELL? Is that what you're?
No, so in the board packet, they give the average subgroup data for ELL, SPED, and FRL. And it's there for within the 5 mile and 2 mile radius, but it looks like that there was nothing for your school specifically. So Envision High School is not on there. So I don't know, and maybe board staff or Rachel, you can provide clarification. Are they at 0%, or do we not have data for them?
I know for the ELL, we would be at 0%. I know that we do not have a high ELL population, and the SPED could be the same reason.
And what about your FRL? I guess I just have concern that your data doesn't necessarily match what we're showing within the 5 mile or 2 mile radius. Within the 2 miles, there's a 0% sped, ELL population as well, but it's between 14 and 19%. So I'm just wondering why your demographics don't match kind of the surrounding neighborhood.
President Lee, if I may,
Yeah.
I do know that with this school having an ADM of only 49 students last year, it is highly likely that those numbers are so low that they've been redacted to protect students through FERPA and whatnot. So it is possible that those numbers are just very, very low, not necessarily in terms of percentage, but in terms of number of students. And that is likely why it is redacted from the publicly available information that we utilize.
Got it. Thank you, Rachel.
You're welcome.
Okay, so then my next question, and maybe this will lend itself to that as well, is just your proficiency. So as part of the board packet, we understand that you're on an alternative school. And so the board or the data on here averages, the ELA AZ merit at 14%. And this is for alternative schools. Math is at 10, science is at 52. It's tough because we obviously do not have FY20 data, which I think, obviously is unfortunate because we're making decisions then off of FY19, 18, and 17 data. And it looks like that we don't have FY19 data. And my guess is that's because you either had less than 10 students in that category or 0% passing. Can you just speak to the percent proficiency for me, please?
Yes. If I look back at the results from 2019, I believe we did have students who tested and scored within the proficiency category, but if I recall, I would need to pull up the exact data. So I am new into my role as superintendent. I just started in January. So I need to review that data closely to be able to tell you what the exact numbers were. But we did have students who scored, and we did show improvements within that school year.
Okay. You just don't have the data with you right now, correct?
Right.
Okay. So board members, I'm not sure where everybody's at. We get a staff recommendation for a reason. And I think we don't just automatically go off of those because otherwise there'd be no reason for a board, right? We definitely, we want to talk to charters and see what's going on. I think that, her addressing or, the charter addressing the enrollment cap makes sense. I'm not convinced that we have enough data to address the last read on the staff recommendation. And so, I feel like if we have this document, we either need to talk about modifying the document if we're not going to go by it, or, when there's not data presented to back up the reasoning, or we go by the document. So I guess I'd just be curious where other board members are at with that.
This is Kathy Hoffman. I have a question for the school staff. Could you speak to your special education services? And because I didn't hear whether or not you have special education services or if you have students that need them.
Yes, we do have special education services and we contract those services. And so our students receive the appropriate support that they need.
Okay, thank you.
But it's my understanding that you have a 0% SPED population. Is that correct? That's
We
do. What's your SPED population?
Right now we have about 7 students. So it doesn't come up in terms of, I guess, overall data because it's such a low number. Right. But right now we have a total of 7 students.
Got it. Thanks. And do you believe, so it sounds like you said you have a wait list of, you're at 80 right now. So I'm assuming you probably have you have a wait list of 80, or you have 80 total. You have a wait list of 5 because you have 75 that you're allowed.
Right. So a total of 80. So a wait list of 5.
Yeah. So board members, for me, there has to be really strong data that supports why we would go against a staff recommendation. And I'm not currently seeing that. I think it sounds like maybe if they went back and had some time, it sounds like with the new management that might be different. But I just have a hard time going against what the staff recommends without that. Where is everyone else?
This is Justin. I agree with you, Mary Ellen.
Okay. So is there a motion? I mean, unless there's more discussion, and I'd like, any board members, if you have anything else, please. Otherwise, is there a motion?
President Lee, this is Carol Crockett.
Yes, Dr. Crockett.
I move, based on the information contained in the board materials and presented today, to deny the request to increase the enrollment cap of CPLC Community Schools Entity ID 90331 for the reason that it does not meet the recommendation of staff.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Alexis, if you could do the roll call.
Vice President Close,
Aye.
Superintendent Hoffman,
And I just like to comment that I do support the work of Chicanos por la Causa, and I think I would have liked to see that the enrollment cap had been met in order to go forward with this expansion.
Dr. Crockett,
Aye.
Mr. Mason, Ms. Rice,
Aye.
Mr. Swanson,
Aye.
President Lee,
Aye.
motion passes unanimously.
Thank you for being here. Moving on to item H2, Imagine Desert West Middle. Is there, oh, actually, Rachel, we'll have you go first. And then if the rep wants to get ready to unmute themselves, that would be great.
And I do see the rep on this call.
Perfect.
Imagine Desert West Middle Inc. has submitted an amendment request to increase its enrollment cap from 510 to 525 for fiscal year 2021. The charter holder stated that the increase is due to a consistently high re-enrollment rate. The charter holder does not meet the staff recommendation criteria because Imagine Desert West Middle does not perform at or above the performance of nearby schools in ELA and math. Additionally, this charter holder was identified for targeted school improvement by the Arizona Department of Education in fiscal year 2018 for the subgroups English language learners and students with disabilities. Therefore, this additional data has been included in the executive summary for consideration.
Great. And is the charter holder on the line? And if so, would you like to unmute yourself and make any statement?
Absolutely. Good morning. This is Brad Uchaz, Executive Vice President for Imagine Schools. I also have on the line Jason Archuleta, our Regional Director. Our principal, unfortunately, had a death in her family and would not be able to attend the meeting. Thank you. First of all, thank you so much for this opportunity to even present. We recognize that we own our data within Imagine in all our schools, and quite frankly, we prefer to be on consent before we go before anything. The reason why we're requesting the small increase from 510 to 525 is because we have a larger bubble that's moving up for our elementary school and into our middle school. But let me address the data just for a few minutes and then open up to any other questions. If you go through our data, you'll notice that we had a B back in 16-17. We were doing pretty well. We were expecting to continue to grow and improve. We did drop to a C in 17-18. We had done some deep diving into our data and recognized that we did have some math challenges. We were implementing a new math curriculum, and we're continuing to work through all of that implementation. The bigger challenge hit us in 1819, however. This is when we expanded the school and we moved into a new building. When we moved in, we had about 100 new students coming into us that we worked very diligently to help support and help grow. However, we were met with some challenges, as anybody would when you're introducing new middle school students into a group of other students who are living by one culture and trying to improve that expectation across the board for all of the students in our school. We added a math coach and a reading coach subsequently after that to try to help booster those scores. As you can see from those 3-year FAE data, the students that had remained with us were still performing much higher than the students that had come in with us. And that is something that we were trying to build off of as we grew our school into a new building. And recognizing that, again, we are accepting any resolution here, but we do own our data and we are trying to work to improve. We're disappointed that we didn't have our 1920 data because we do believe that that data would have shown that we made the necessary gains for the request.
Thank you for that information. Board members, are there any questions for this charter holder? Oh, sorry. I thought I heard maybe somebody saying something. No? Okay. So it's only 15 students. It looks like, just to be clear, you're only asking for 15 more students. Is that correct?
That is correct. And it's due to the number of students coming up from the elementary that would transition into the middle.
Right. So charters have come before us and I think we've been consistent, or at least I've wanted to look at, and I think this is why we asked for it to be on here, is this FAE data, because I think sometimes it's like what you said, charters, we talk about the data, the ELA math and science scores, but then we look at this FAE to see, when their students are with you for a long period of time, what's happening. And I know when we talk about that, particularly the fact that that's increasing, I think there's strong evidence that what you're doing is working. And with only coming up here and asking for 15, I think that's different than if you're coming up in here, and coming here and asking for 100 or 200 more. I would be inclined to not want to, to go by the recommendation. The FAE score makes me more comfortable to grant the 15. I'm not sure if everyone's okay with that. If so, we can do a motion, but if not, we should discuss. Okay. Is there a motion?
President Lee, this is Hans.
Yes.
I move, based on the information contained in the board materials and presented today, to approve the request to increase the enrollment cap from 510 to 525 for the contract of Imagine Desert West Middle, Inc.
Is there a second?
Second, this is Carol.
Thank you, Dr. Crockett. Alexis, with a roll call, please.
Vice President Close,
Aye.
Superintendent Hoffman,
Aye.
Dr. Crockett,
Aye.
Mr. Mason, Ms. Rice,
Aye.
Mr. Swanson.
I just want to make a comment. I think I'm following with President Lee, but had this been a bigger number, I think we would have many more difficult questions to answer. I want to make sure that 15, I think, for the logic for what you are trying to do makes sense to me. But I am concerned about the performance. I do like the FAE data, but I think if it was a bigger number, we'd have more questions. So, but I vote aye.
Mr. Twist,
Aye.
Ms. Yanoff,
Aye.
President Lee.
Yeah, and I just to take a moment, I appreciate and echo Mr. Swanson's comments about if this were a bigger number, as well as I think the other piece that we're missing is that FY20 data, which I think puts charters, who have worked hard, to do that at a disadvantage because we don't have those numbers. So, but with that, aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on. Item H3, Liberty Traditional School. Rachel.
Liberty Traditional School has submitted an amendment to add an Arizona online instruction program to its charter. If approved, the program will serve students in grades K through 8. This request was reviewed for substantive completeness by Rio Salato. This includes evaluating the submission against a rubric and demonstrating proficiency with the AOI program through a virtual demonstration. Liberty Traditional Charter School, Inc. met the scoring expectations of the rubric and Rio Salato's team.
Is there a representative from Liberty Traditional?
Can they hear us?
We have our mic on mute. Yeah, they should.
Yep.
Be okay.
Hello?
Hi, we can hear you.
No.
We can hear you.
Yep.
Can we pull this up on their
Yeah.
phone or something?
Right.
We're having some technical difficulties. We're pulling it up on another device. Very sorry.
No problem.
They can't hear us, or they can?
They should be able to hear us, but our speakers just went dead.
Ashley, should we maybe chat them that we can hear them? I think maybe they just can't hear us.
Oh, I'm looking to do that right now.
Great.
No.
Dan, I believe you were the only one that is able to do that. I'm not able to
Are you
chat.
calling them?
Dan, if you can let the charter know that we can hear them.
Or be prepared to mute them because when they call in, it'll.
Oh, I think we got you.
Oh, perfect. Yep, we can hear you guys.
Okay, good. I'm so sorry about that.
That is okay. This is the time it is. So if you guys could state your name for the record, and if you have a statement for us, that would be great.
Sure. My name is Raina James, and I am the charter holder for Liberty Traditional Charter. We've been around since 1999, and I just want to thank you guys for the opportunity to address you and hopefully be considered for an online school.
Great. Board members, are there any questions? Okay. Yeah, I don't see any issues with the data, and they received a recommendation. So is there a motion?
President Lee.
Yes.
Sorry, this is Ashley. Really quick, just I think a question for the charter that board staff would need to know is for the AOI, knowing that we have the executive order that allows for distance learning this year, do they want to implement their AOI this upcoming school year or next school year?
Next school year.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley. I know you told me that ahead of time and I forgot to ask. So yes, thank you for reminding me. Hans, do you have a motion for us?
Sure. I move based on the information contained in the board materials and presented today to approve the request to amend the charter contract of Liberty Traditional Charter School, Inc., entity ID 10968, to add a probationary online school under ARS 15-808 to serve grades K through 8.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Alexis, if you could do the roll call, please.
I'm sorry, my computer just froze for a second, sorry.
That's okay.
Okay, Vice President Close?
Aye.
Superintendent Hoffman?
Aye.
Dr. Crockett? Mr. Mason? Ms. Rice?
Aye.
Mr. Swanson?
I can go on a roll here and make a comment. I'm going to vote aye, but and maybe this is for at the end of the meeting, but I think we're going to be seeing dozens and dozens and dozens and maybe hundreds of these. And I think I'd like the staff to maybe just comment on their view of how this is going to go over the next several months in the future with other schools going this way and how we're going to manage that process. But I vote aye.
Mr. Twist?
Aye.
Ms. Yana?
Aye.
President Lee?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Moving, and so I don't want Mr. Swanson's comment to go to waste. Just so Ashley, I don't know if now is the appropriate time to make comment. I echo his concern. It's my understanding though that the AOI submission has a timeline. Is that correct? That we're coming up to that timeline where these can be submitted? Or Rachel?
Ashley, would you like me to take that?
If you'd like to. Yep.
Okay. So that board members are aware, AOI amendment requests are processed by staff only in terms of the administrative review. So our task is to ensure that all of the components are included in the amendment, so that all the pieces are there. We then forward those on to Rio Salado. We have worked very closely with Rio Salado. They have convened some additional teams due to the large influx of additional AOI requests over the last few months, and as we assume they will be moving forward. I also do want to point out that staff is currently working through a slight revision of this amendment to clean it up a little bit. We've learned something. We hadn't gotten many of these over the last 5 years, and now all of a sudden with so many coming through, we have found some things that we need to be updating after conversations with Rio and State Board of Ed. So we are working through that process, and we'll be bringing that to you for approval in the coming months. With that, we are also looking at adding in a staff recommendation criteria piece to help the board in its decision making with this. Member Swanson, do you have anything else you'd like me to address with that?
Rachel, very helpful. Thank you. And I just think this is just gonna be a management thing for us, and as we reinvent the education system here on the fly. So yes.
And
Thank
for
you.
President Lee and Member Swanson, what we can do is I think we are going to need to have an additional discussion. So before we bring the AOI amendment revisions to you, we can have a discussion at the board as to bigger picture what the AOI amendment request should look like, knowing the current state of education and what we expect to happen in the future.
And are schools allowed to submit these requests throughout the entire year? Is there a cutoff period?
They are, and we have been working with schools throughout the last couple of months.
Okay, thank you. Member Swanson, did you have any additional questions or?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, moving on to item H4, Lincoln Preparatory Academy. Rachel.
Lincoln Preparatory Academy has submitted an amendment request to increase the enrollment cap from 575 to 725 for fiscal year 2021. The increase is to allow the charter holder to serve more students in the community without increasing class sizes. The charter holder does not meet the staff recommendation criteria because Great Hearts Academy's Lincoln Prep does not perform at or above the average performance of nearby schools in ELA and math. And I do believe Member Twist will be recusing himself from this item.
That is correct.
Perfect. Okay, is there a representative from Lincoln Preparatory Academy?
Yes, good morning, President Lee and board members. My name is Brandon Crow. I'm the Executive Director for Upper Schools for Great Hearts Academies, and I'm here to answer any questions you might have.
Great. Yes. Could you just go ahead and dive into just the comments about the benchmark that you did not meet, performing at or above the average performance of nearby schools in ELA or math?
Certainly. Yeah, I think there are actually a few factors. Probably one of the biggest is that our school is a 6th through 12th grade school. At the time, it was reviewed as a 6th through 11th grade because we hadn't yet had a graduating class. And so it was evaluated on a hybrid model where a lot of the schools that it's compared to, either within 2 or 5 miles, are either on the K-8 or the 9-12 model, whereas ours is straddling both. So a lot of the schools that we're compared to are elementary only, whereas ours is dealing with high school and middle school. What makes it further complicated is that the year that the data is looked at, our high school testing, this was the year that we were able to select from the menu of assessments. Our high school testing was only the SAT for our 11th grade, which was a very, very small cohort of students. It was our first graduating class. So at that time was only about 20 students or so. So the point is that the data that's shown school-wide on the hybrid model is really not representing the full span of our students or grades. It's kind of focusing it in the middle school only. And the enrollment increase that we're looking for is especially to serve our high school students, where the middle school students would push up into grades 9 through 12.
I see. So let me, just so I'm understanding what you're saying, are you
Yeah.
saying the AZ merit data that's showing on here is only representative of the junior high in FY19 because you used SAT at the high school level?
Correct. And even in the high school, the data that we would have for high school would be a very small group because it was only 11th graders at the time that were tested from the menu, not 9th and 10th graders as well. That would typically be the case.
And did you not have to test the 9th and 10th through the AZ merit, or were you able to just use SAT for 11th to satisfy?
It was the 1 year where it was the SAT only. I believe there were only a few schools in the state that did that for that year, and we were one of them.
Okay. And it's my understanding, so in your data, because I think the concern, you know, for me at least, of not performing, I think it makes sense, right, what you're saying. So to clarify, the data that they're being compared to in board staff, can you confirm this is K-8 schools? Is that when they're talking about the 2 to 5 mile radius, or what schools are included in there? Are they junior high, or are they elementary and high schools? Are they all the schools? What's the format of schools that they're being compared to?
So when we run that data, we pull that data directly from the ADE system. So when we pull those schools down, we pull out of the AZ report cards component, and we all schools that are serving any grade 6 through 12, because those are the grades served by the charter. So Mr. Crow is correct that is going to include schools that serve grades K through 6, schools that serve grades K through 8, schools that serve 6-12, any high school grade. So anybody who touches any of those grades in that grade band of 6-12 is going to be included in that data.
Got it. Okay, I have 2 more questions. Can you talk to me about your FAE scores? Because so sometimes when we look at the data, something I like to look at is the FAE, like how are we doing with students on a long-term basis? And I see that the FAE is currently, for ELA, it's declined, 1 year FAE is 76.5, and it goes to 69.5 to 3-year FAE. And then math stays roughly the same. It increases at 2 year, it goes back down, but roughly the same from 1 to 3 years. So could you talk to me about maybe the ELA FAE data decreasing?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things. One is, and I know this isn't unique to us, but it's unfortunate that we don't have last year's data to show. The other thing is, typically in our schools, what we've seen over the last 15 years is that our students do struggle in the middle school more than we'd like, but it's really when they get into the high school that they catch up and excel. And so that's what we've seen in our other schools, other Great Heart schools nearby, and it's what we anticipate seeing here as well, especially as the demand continues from these students that are in these grades 6, 7, and 8 to push into our high school to continue with their academic program. So I guess the short answer is, yeah, it looks like there is a dip. That's not what we want to see. That's not consistent with what you usually see. And certainly students start to excel when they get into our high school program after they've had this middle school experience.
Are the 3-year FAE students, aren't those your high school students?
Some of them, but in many cases, they're starting with us. Given how new the school is, in some cases, it's students that are starting, the bulk of them in our 6th grade and then moving up kind of through our 8th grade. So I think the bulk of the students would be in our middle school.
That's right. I'm sorry, 6 through 8. Yep. Okay. And then,
like I was mentioning, the school it's on the hybrid model because it serves grades 6 through 12, but at the time of evaluation, it was only serving grades 6 through 11. So I know it's unique on the hybrid model.
Right. And then talk to me about your FRL numbers and your ELL numbers, because they seem to not match again, we're showing, I don't know if it's 0% or if it's just so low that it's not there. Can you talk to me about that?
Sure thing. Yeah, so the first on the FRL students, when we in the past had asked families for information to track for that, we told families that it would only be used. The data would only be used for E-rate. And so we didn't show the data, but now we've been asking families and telling them that it would be to apply for Title I funds, et cetera. And so we do have data that's more recent. It's about, if I had to ballpark it, it's about 10% of the population comes in as FRL. And then for the ELL, it's something where if the number of students, as I understand it, falls below 10, that information is redacted. So it does fall below 10 in the year it was recorded. The number is about 4. So it's not the fact that it's 0. It just doesn't rise above 10 for ELL.
So can you tell me why there'd be a 10 or 11% discrepancy? So let's say your FRL was 10%, right, and the average, is 21% within the 2-mile radius, 29% within the 5-mile radius. So do you know what would account for that 11% discrepancy?
Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, it's hard to say why we don't have more FRL students that would select that particular school. Demographically, the school's fairly diverse. And so I'm not certain as to why that would be the case, but it's not the case, I think, that it's 0, right? When you see the numbers on the report, it has 0 compared to 20% in some cases. Ours is, like I said, about 10%. I should also mention, though, that when we last tracked it was 10%, we have good reason to believe that it's even higher in light of COVID-19 and a number of other factors that we just haven't polled parents yet again.
And you plan on reporting those numbers or polling parents and reporting those in the future, or no?
We do. Yeah, we do, and we're fully planned to. In fact, what we're trying to determine right now is if we're going to re-ask parents in the current year, given just all the changes that have gone on over the last 4 or 5 months.
Sure. So board members, I'd be curious to see where other people are at. I think this is one of those tricky scenarios where the declining data concerns me a little bit. Concerns me, except that the tricky part is that they are performing above the state average, significantly above the state average. And this is where it gets a little tricky. So I'm not sure where other board members are at with this motion. I'm a little concerned also that the FRL isn't matching the subgroup area. I'd love for you guys to look into that and see and come back with an answer for that question. Because that can be concerning. It doesn't have to be, but it can be. Board members, where are you guys at with this?
This is Jim Swanson, since we have a very quiet board today. Given everything that's in here, I'm pretty okay to go forward with this.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Member Swanson. Where's everyone else at?
President Lee, this is Hans.
Yes.
I agree with you that I have some concerns, but they're minor. I think that the school, the entity can get back to us on, give us an update after some time has elapsed, but I'm fine moving forward.
Okay. Is there? Yes.
President Lee, this is Kathy. I'm also good with moving forward. I think that the main area of concern was that comparison with surrounding schools in terms of academics, but they are B schools, so that is really solid. That does speak to their overall academic performance, and also in comparison with our other schools. So to me, that's not a huge red flag, just something that, of course, we want all of our schools to be striving to continue working, to not be satisfied, and to especially be looking at making sure they're serving the students who are at risk as well. But I would also be good with moving forward.
Okay, great. Thank you, board members. So Hans, it sounds like there's a motion. So if you could make the motion.
I move based on the information contained in the board materials and presented today to approve the request to increase the enrollment cap from 575 to 725 for the contract of Lincoln Preparatory Academy.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. And Alexis with the roll call.
Vice President Close,
Aye.
Superintendent Hoffman,
Aye.
Mr. Mason,
Aye.
Ms. Rice,
Aye.
Mr. Swanson,
Aye.
Ms. Yanov,
Aye.
President Lee.
So I know this motion will pass, but I feel like for consistency for myself, I'm going to go ahead and vote no.
Motion passes through majority vote.
Thank you. All right, moving on, item H5, Rachel.
Southgate Academy, Inc. submitted a request to add an Arizona online instruction program to its charter. If approved, the program will serve grades 6 through 12. This request was reviewed for substantive completeness by Rio Salato. This includes evaluating the submission against a rubric and demonstrating proficiency with the AOI program through a virtual demonstration. Southgate Academy, Inc. met the scoring expectations of the rubric and Rio Salato's team.
Great, and is there a charter representative available? If so, if you could unmute yourself, introduce yourself, and make a statement, please, if you'd like.
Hi, this is Sherry Hassan. And first of all, I'd like to just say thank you for this opportunity. And my team has got a greater respect for anybody in leadership, and that includes the Arizona State Charter Board. Thank you for this opportunity. In submitting this, we are requesting that we start next year. We've been involved in your board meetings, and we know that's a question you ask. So we would like to do it next year because of the governor's executive order. The reason for that is we've already spent, and in our budget for this next coming year, $1 million towards 750 Chromebooks. They're already in our possession. We already have 270 laptops, of which most well, the laptops are gone, and about 1/3 of the Chromebooks have already been signed out for this year. Because we're changing our curriculum to partnership with Edgenuity in both the brick and mortar school, and it's what we would be doing for the online, hiring their staff, their experienced teachers to work with us. We have added $300,000 to the budget for their teachers to work with our teachers. So our teachers will still be there this year, but we felt that the team, and working with Leah, who is the coordinator for Edgenuity, that that's the best route to make sure that our students begin to move up the scale in their academic gains. I do have my team with me. We have Michelle Felix. She's the administrator of education. We have Carla Avisu. If you have questions for her, she's a principal for 7 through 12. And this year would be working with that group for the long distance learning. Sylvia, our superintendent, and that's Sylvia Camelot, and Joe Felix, who is in charge of the data, and he will also be coordinating the AOI. He's the coordinator for it should we get approved.
Thank you. And so I just have a quick question. Is this your first year, you said, using Edgenuity? This will be your first year?
This is our first year. We've been coordinating this since April with them, but yes, this is our first official year with them.
Great. And so you were fully brick and mortar before, or did you use some sort of like digital curriculum before?
No, totally brick and mortar.
Okay. Board
So
member.
we have pretty much redone everything to make sure that we can accommodate the population we serve.
Sure. And it looks like you guys are an A alternative. Is that correct?
That is correct. We went from a C to an A this past year.
Great. Congratulations on that. Okay, board members, I don't have any questions. Are there any questions? from other board members? Okay, and if that, is there a motion?
President Lee, this is Hans. I move based on the information contained in the board materials and presented today to approve the request to amend the charter contract of Southgate Academy Inc. to add a probationary online school under ARS 15-808 to serve grades 6 through 12.
Great, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Alexis, if you could do the roll call, please.
Vice President Close,
Aye.
Superintendent Hoffman,
Aye.
Mr. Mason,
Aye.
Ms. Rice,
Aye.
Mr. Swanson,
Yes.
Mr. Twist,
Aye.
Ms. Yanoff,
Aye.
President Lee.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, we are on our next agenda item I, charter replications, and it's my understanding all three will be considered together. So Rachel, go ahead, please.
That is correct. Trying to save us all some time. Legacy Traditional School Avondale has submitted 3 applications to replicate its charter. The new charters will be held by 3 new entities with schools in East Tucson, Mesa, and Phoenix. All 3 charters will hold a contract with Vertex Education, the same education service provider as the Avondale charter. The proposed schools each have a target start date of July 1st, 2021. If approved, each charter will have an enrollment cap of 600 and will serve students in grades K through 8.
Great, and is there a representative from the charter here?
Yes, good morning. This is Nicole Kirkley, Superintendent, and I also have with me today Anastasia Hawkins, our Director of Compliance.
Great, thank you for being here. Any information you guys would like to give us or state for the board?
We just wanted to quickly say thank you for giving us the opportunity to bring forward these 3 additional replication requests today. We're proud to be able to continue to offer an A-rated education to tens of thousands of students across the state. We're excited this time to focus on a little different model and be a smaller school model. As you may know, typically the legacy schools have housed around 1,200 students in a building, and these potential requests are for 600 or less students in areas where before we were not able to open with our larger buildings. So we want to be able to continue to meet the needs of Arizona students by bringing our accelerated education into these new communities. We've been working to determine what communities have the most need for school choice, need higher rated schools, areas with enough population to support these small schools. So we've identified 3 different sites, one in Deer Valley, North Phoenix area, one in Mesa, and one in East Tucson. And with that, we're available for any questions the board may have for us.
Great, thank you. Board members, are there any questions? Okay, then with that, is there a motion?
President Lee, this is Hans. I move based on the information contained in the board materials and presented today to approve the 3 applications and grant 3 replication charters to Legacy Traditional Schools. This will establish contracts for 3 new entities: Legacy Traditional School Deer Valley, Legacy Traditional School East Tucson, and the Legacy Traditional School Mesa, to establish each charter with a new school, each serving grades K through 8, and each with an enrollment cap of 600.
Great, is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Justin. Alexis, with the roll call, please.
Vice President Close,
Aye.
Superintendent Hoffman,
Aye.
Mr. Mason,
Aye.
Ms. Rice,
Aye.
Mr. Swanson,
Aye.
Mr. Twist,
Aye.
Ms. Yanoff,
Aye.
President Lee.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, thank you. Okay, moving on to item J, compliance matters. And it looks like Rachel's going to take a break, and we have a presentation from Joanna.
Good morning. Good morning, President Lee, Superintendent Hoffman, and board members. Today, you will be exercising your authority as outlined in the board's operational performance framework. Pursuant to Arizona Revised Statute 15183R and Arizona Administrative Code R75403F, if the board determines a charter holder does not meet the board's minimum operational performance expectations, it shall consider the charter holder's noncompliance and may subject the charter holder to additional charter oversight as outlined in Article 6 of Arizona Administrative Code, including issuing a notice of intent to revoke the charter contract. The charter holders being considered at this board meeting have received an overall rating for fiscal year 2020 of does not meet the board's operational performance standard due to having at least 6 of the 9 operational performance framework measures being rated does not meet standard. Before you discuss each charter holder, I'm going to provide you a brief overview of the board's operational performance framework. I have a little slide presentation. The purpose of the operational performance framework is to communicate to the board and the public compliance-related expectations of charter holders, including but not limited to expectations the charter school is required to meet through state and federal law, the charter contract, and administrative rule. Structurally, the framework is comprised of 9 measures that are grouped within 3 indicators. They are implementation of the educational program, financial and operational reporting and compliance, and additional obligations such as student record retention, teacher salary posting, and others. The guidance document for the operational performance framework outlines the metrics, targets, and ratings for each of these 9 measures. Here we see an image of a charter holder's operational dashboard, which provides data for the last 5 fiscal years, 2017 through 2021. The board utilizes information that is available to evaluate the various measures in the operational framework. Some measures in the operational framework require periodic monitoring to ensure compliance, while others can be analyzed annually during site visits or through reports submitted by the charter holder to the board. Others may only be reviewed when the board is presented with information that warrants evaluation. Currently, most operational compliance reviews occur when audits are submitted, site visits are conducted, a complaint is filed that alleges operational noncompliance, an amendment is submitted, and an outside agency notifies the board on a noncompliance issue such as timely submission of the reports and corrective action plans. As mentioned in the beginning, the board has a statutory requirement to ground its action in evidence of the charter holder's performance in accordance with the performance framework adopted by the board. The operational framework includes the operational expectations of the charter school, including adherence to all applicable laws and obligations of the charter contract. And then next slide. Lastly, the board's responsibility is to consider a charter holder's noncompliance when it receives an overall rating of does not meet standard for a fiscal year. Actions taken by the board have included entering into an operational consent agreement or issuing a notice of intent to revoke. In addition, a charter holder will receive additional monitoring site visits to ensure the school continues to improve their operational performance. Do you have any questions for me regarding the presentation?
I do not. Board members, are there any questions?
No, well done.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. If not, I have a brief introduction for the first charter holder.
Thank you, Joanna.
Okay, this is for Arizona Calatin Youth Resources Incorporated. On March 5th, 2020, board staff conducted an unscheduled targeted site visit to City View High School due to the school receiving an F letter grade for fiscal year 2019. This school is operated by Arizona Calatin Youth Resources Incorporated. At the visit, board staff identified multiple compliance issues leading to marking the charter holder's operational dashboard and requiring submissions to bring the charter holder into compliance. The issues identified deficiencies in maintaining alignment with the mission on ASBCS Online and the statutorily required teacher salary posting. Outside of the issues identified during the school site visit, the charter holder was also out of compliance in its requirements of its audit corrective action plan, open meeting law, timely submission of required documents, and in submitting its school level reporting form to the Arizona Department of Education. The charter representative, Charlotte Barnett, is here to address the board and or answer any questions.
Thank you, Joanna. And if you'd like to unmute yourself and state your name for the record, please.
Hi, yes, good morning. My name is Charlotte Barnett. I'm the CEO with Arizona Colatine Youth Resources. I have with me Philip Woolley, our principal, and Aida Jimenez Usselton, our director of education.
Great, welcome. And if you could please just address the areas of concern or the
Sure.
dashboard. Yeah, thank you.
Sure. You know, we have had a couple of years of identification of some necessary changes that needed to be implemented. The board and I had started strategically identifying issues that needed to be corrected, such as how we were managing our finances, the staff involved with the performance of the organization, and had started taking actions to make improvements. That included hiring a new HR manager, hiring a new principal and director of education, looking at our enrollment and our retention processes, and an overhaul of our financial system, moving from one financial platform and to another within the same year. We also had an identification that it was also time to replace our finance team. And so we did that as well during the summer last year. So you can see over the last 2 years, looking at specifically the financial performance of the organization, we had started making some changes. Within that, we had missed a couple of things by bringing in new people, making sure that they were adequately trained and understanding of all the requirements. So some of the items that occurred that were mentioned, you know, the website being updated was really just more of it being missed to be put on both Arizona Colatine's website and on City View High School's website. And looking at additional information that's in there, the you know, the financial performance of the organization, you know, looking at our ADM in 1 year and operating in a deficit for 1 year, had some continuing issues that we weren't able to correct quickly enough. So we do strongly feel that based on all of the actions we've taken over the last couple of years, the changes we've made with staff, the financial performance that we are now experiencing, it has improved drastically from where we were a year ago as well. So we anticipate when we submit our final report for the June 30th financial reporting that we are going to be showing remarked increases. And part of that, unfortunately, did include a bankruptcy that is being finalized currently with a full pay plan and everything being taken care of and moving forward in a much more positive light.
Great, thank you so much for that. Board members, are there any questions for the charter holder? Okay, talk to me real fast. So is it my understanding these issues have all been resolved, or are there any outstanding still?
That is correct. All of these issues have been resolved, and the bankruptcy finalizes here actually within the next 15 days. So we will be 100% positive moving forward.
Okay, talk to me about that just specifically, because I mean, while all of these issues are of concern, the one that sticks out to me personally is that fingerprinting issue. So did the temporary worker have a fingerprint clearance card and you just did not have it? What was the case with that? Because that's, you know, we're talking about people working with students. That's, you know, safety is of the utmost importance. So talk to me, and that's a fairly standard requirement, even with, you know, changing staff or things like that. So talk to me about that specific situation, please.
Yeah, absolutely. And yes, that's exactly what the case was. The individual did have a fingerprint clearance card, but because they were temporary and due to the changes with the HR manager, it was in the process of being obtained, and then that person stopped working with us and did not provide the documentation to us. And because of the changes with staff, it was just something that got missed, unfortunately. 100% of our staff otherwise were in compliance, and at this moment in time, 100% of our staff are in compliance. And our operations manager is now in charge of this, this role of the organization and is ensuring that we are 100% in compliance moving forward. In fact, I now get a report on a regular basis to ensure that we are in compliance.
Okay.
President Lee?
Yes, please.
And Charlotte, I heard what you were saying about rectifying the situations, but when I look at the report card, I was shocked and at how bad it was. And this is your job, and you're taking taxpayer money to educate our children, and you have an obligation in your charter to manage that. And I'm also, so I'm very concerned about it, and I understand you're working on it, and I appreciate that, and I hope you get where you need to be. I'm also very concerned that, this is a school with, if I have it right, 111 or so ADM, and a cap of 700. So we have potential huge amount of growth out there with what I'd say some significant management issues. And so I'm very concerned about that. And I think this is a fairly easy spot for us to land in, that we should be putting this school on notice to revoke the charter if they don't get their act together. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Swanson. Yeah, I tend to agree. It takes a lot to get here for compliance matters. In fact, I think we have around 470 charters and, only 5 made it. And you're going to probably hear me say that a lot throughout, the next couple of times. And the reason why there's only 5 is because we do provide, we give flexibility for schools to have, an issue or a hiccup, but to have this many is difficult to ignore. I appreciate that it sounds like you have, policies in place now. I also am concerned, with the issues with the F letter grade. And can you speak again? And it might just be due to your size. Is that why we don't have your subgroup data as well, showing your percent of ELL, SPED, and FRL?
That is correct. Yes, due to our size and the number of students that fall into each of those classifications, we've struggled with getting the correct number consistently in the school, which is part of the reason we were looking to make a lot of the changes we were with bringing in a new director and a new principal to help address. We've also been taking additional measures with benchmarking and software availability so that we can make sure that there are some stringent processes in place to help these students make the progression that they need to. You heard me mention earlier on, we've been addressing enrollment and retention. The biggest concern in retention is that it's hard to assess students if they're not present to be assessed. And so really looking at how do we tighten everything up. We've brought in a social worker to also assist with those young people, because many of them are the young people that are experiencing a lot of concerns and issues at home. And how do we ensure that they can stay present on a daily basis so that they don't lose academic capability moving forward.
Right. And give me the timeline again of when you had new management, because the other thing I'm looking at is your timely submissions and particularly your failing school notification. It looks like that wasn't submitted until April 7th, but you guys were notified January 16th and February 19th. And so was that under the new management?
So unfortunately, that was due to a technology issue. I had had an assistant do some reorganization of my inbox and was unable to figure out why I was missing emails from the board staff, and kept looking to figure out why I was missing these emails, and eventually figured out, because we were notified that we were not in compliance, that I was missing emails. And so subsequently, that has been corrected, and I have been extremely hypervigilant to make sure that that does not continue occurring, and working with board staff to ensure that we remain in compliance at this point.
Okay, thank you. Ashley, can you clarify the options? I know, I believe Mr. Swanson, and correct me if I misheard you, that you were looking for an option not to intent to revoke, but to put like on a consent agreement. Is that what I was hearing you say?
If that is the best way to make sure we have options open to revoke, but also give the school a little bit of room to move forward, I guess.
Sure.
Yeah, presently this is Ashley. That a consent agreement is appropriate if the board wishes to do that. In the past, what we have done is the board has issued a consent agreement, and then board staff works with the charters to put that agreement together that ultimately then would be approved by the board at a later date. But what it would require the charter to do is to stay in compliance with all of the areas in which the non-compliance had previously been identified. And if the school is identified as being out of compliance in the next 3 years, then the board can close down the school.
Ashley,
Yes.
and President Lee, that's what I want. Okay. That's what I would recommend.
Right, thank you. And is there, Ashley, are they already on a consent agreement for their F letter grade in FY19?
Yes, they are.
Okay. Board members, are there any other questions or thoughts?
This is Matt Mason. You mentioned a bankruptcy. I'd just like an update on where you're at with teacher pay.
Sure. All teachers are being paid regularly and timely. There are no issues with them receiving their pay. And in fact, this most recent school year, we did a couple of increases on a few of the teachers that were a little bit lower than the rest, and and that was just due to their experience. So we were able to bring everybody up. Off the top of my head, I am not recalling the exact amount, but it is posted on the website. And I'm hoping I'm not putting Philip too much on the spot. Philip, do you remember what the average salary right now for the teachers is off the top of your head?
I want to say it's 52, I believe, somewhere around there.
And throughout the bankruptcy process, teachers were paid consistently without being missed. Is that correct?
That is correct. Everybody was paid on time. And it's actually one of the reasons why the board decided to go in this direction, to ensure that we could continue services and pay staff.
Okay. And Mr. Mason, did you have an opinion about whether or not you were wanting the consent or intent to revoke?
Well, it sounds like we already have a consent agreement in place with them based on the 19 action.
Yep. So to be clear, President Lee and Member Mason, we have an academic consent agreement with the school because they did receive an F letter grade in FY19. They will be under that consent agreement for academics for 3 years, so they cannot receive an F in the next 3 years. but that consent agreement does not include any of these operational compliance issues.
It's clear that accountability is absolutely necessary here. This is Matt Mason again. If we already have the one, I understand it's academic. I think I would support an operational as well, just given the magnitude of failure that we're seeing in the filing. And I understand you have a new team. You guys are working to address that, and I can appreciate that. But certainly I would hope that you could appreciate our position, and that we're looking at kind of failures across the board from an operational performance perspective. And we need some accountability.
So Mr. Mason, are you saying that you would want to not do a consent and do the letter of intent to revoke?
Well, I'm saying that I think I would support Member Swanson's suggestion.
Okay. And I think that's where I'm at too, we have to have accountability. I said it before and I'm going to say it again. When we only have 5 charters out of a portfolio of 470 before us, it takes a lot to get here. And I agree, we have to have accountability with that. If the board is comfortable with doing an operational consent, then I would support that as well. Any other questions from the board? And if not, is there a motion?
President Lee, this is Hans. Are we ready for a motion?
It sounds like that, yes.
Okay, I just want to start off by saying I agree with all the other comments made by the board members regarding Arizona Colatina Youth Resources. Thank you. So, having said that, I move to find that Arizona Colatina Youth Resources Incorporated has failed to meet the operational performance expectations set forth in the board's operational performance framework and has violated its charter contract and state and federal law. Further, these failures provide a sufficient basis to issue a notice of intent to revoke the charter contract of Arizona Colatina Youth Resources Incorporated. However, the board is authorized to exercise its legal discretion with regard to actions taken against a charter holder that is not in compliance with its charter, other obligations to the board, and state and federal law. In an effort to bring Arizona Colatina Youth Resources Incorporated into compliance, the board directs staff to work with legal counsel to develop a consent agreement that addresses the Arizona Colatina Youth Resources Incorporated's non-compliance with the board's operational performance expectations, its charter, and state and federal law. The board further directs staff to bring the consent agreement back to the board for consideration at a subsequent board meeting. If the charter holder chooses not to accept the terms of the consent agreement developed by board staff, then it is the board's decision that the charter holder will be placed on a future agenda for the board to issue a notice of intent to revoke Arizona Colatina Youth Resources Incorporated's charter contract for the reasons already specified.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Rice. Alexis, with the roll call, please.
Vice President Close,
Aye.
Superintendent Hoffman,
Aye.
Mr. Mason,
Aye.
Ms. Rice,
Aye.
Mr. Swanson,
Aye.
Mr. Twist,
Aye.
Ms. Yanov, President Lee.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
All right, thank you so much. Okay, moving on to item J2, Little Lamb Community School. And
All right.
Joanna, do you have a presentation for us?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you. Mary Caranta is going to be providing you the introduction for this charter, as she was the lead person that conducted the site visit, and she's also the charter's assigned education program manager. So I'll have Mary do this one.
Thank you.
Good morning, President Lee, Superintendent Hoffman, and board members. On January 23rd, 2020, board staff conducted an unscheduled site visit to Mission Montessori Academy, a school operated by Little Lamb Community School. The purpose of the visit was to conduct the charter's 5-year interval review as required by statute and Rule 8AC R7-5-505C. During the site visit, several compliance issues were identified, resulting in the charter holder failing to meet the minimum operational performance expectations in fiscal year 2020. The multiple compliance issues led to marking the charter holder's operational dashboard and requiring submissions to bring the charter holder into compliance. Several of the issues identified deficiencies in financial operating and reporting compliance, including enrollment processes, facility documentation, teacher resumes, teacher salary posting, and timely submissions for board alignment. Outside of the issues identified during the school site visit, the charter holder was also out of compliance in its requirements to timely submit its fiscal year 2019 audit report. At this time, do you have any questions for me as the education program manager that was the lead for this site visit?
I do not. Board members, are there any questions? Okay, thank you so much, Mary. That was great.
Hang on.
Oh, yes, Mr. Swanson.
Mary. So what have they, what's the progress they've made, or are they going to report that to us?
At this time, I can report it to you. At this time, all the issues have been resolved with the exception of the board alignment due to the charter governance request being tabled earlier in this board meeting, but everything else is resolved.
Thank you.
I believe we do have, if there are no more questions for me, Charter Representative Jodine Tryon, who was on earlier, to address any questions the board may have.
Great, thank you so much, Mary. Jodine, are you?
Yes,
Perfect.
yes, I am here.
Great, and if you could just make some comments about, you know, how you got here and what you've done to fix the situation and to make sure that you're not here again.
Okay, I would be happy to. Thank you. As far as the audit not being reported, the audit was completed in October 15th, and I thought that it was sent in on November 16th. I received from ADE that the audit had not been received. I called the auditor and I was told that there was a signature missing and it was not sent in. And so I immediately signed it and it was sent in immediately. So does that answer that question?
Yes. And what about, I know that we talked briefly about your board being in an alignment, and you said you do have a plan to make sure that that gets rectified.
Well, yes, we have been interviewing 2 people that we are considering putting on the board. And we're still interviewing.
Okay, thank you. Board members, are there any other questions? Okay. Is there, I'm not sure if somebody has a question or it's just background noise, but if so, please feel free to stop me. Are there, if not, I would feel comfortable. I'll say time and time again, I think we have to have accountability with this. And so I would err on the side though of providing the opportunity for the consent agreement. So that way they can, have the opportunity to just not be here again and continue with their school. So unless board members have any objections to that, it sounds like we might be ready for a motion because I haven't heard anything else.
So President Lear, I think I'm agreeing with you to develop a consent agreement.
Okay, perfect. Then Hans, is there a motion?
Yeah. This is Hans. I move to find that Little Lamb Community School has failed to meet the operational performance expectations set forth in the board's operational performance framework and has violated its charter contract and state and federal law. Further, these failures provide a sufficient basis to issue a notice of intent to revoke the charter contract of Little Lamb Community School. However, the board is authorized to exercise its legal discretion with regard to actions taken against A charter holder that is not in compliance with this charter, other obligations to the board and state and federal law. In an effort to bring Little Lamb Community School into compliance, the board directs staff to work with legal counsel to develop a consent agreement that addresses the Little Lamb Community School's noncompliance with the board's operational performance expectations, its charter, and state and federal law. The board further directs staff to bring the consent agreement back to the board for consideration at a subsequent board meeting. If the charter holder chooses not to accept the terms of the consent agreement developed by board staff, then it is the board's decision that the charter holder will be placed on a future agenda for the board to issue a notice of intent to revoke Little Lamb Community School's charter contract for the reasons already specified.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. With the roll call, please.
We have to go on the consent.
Vice President Close,
Aye.
Superintendent Hoffman,
Aye.
Mr. Mason,
Aye.
Ms. Rice,
Aye.
Mr. Swanson,
Aye.
Mr. Twist,
Aye.
Ms. Yanov, President Lee.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimous.
Thank you. All right, item J3. And is this, I'm not sure who's presenting on this, Joanna or Mary?
Okay. Hi, I'm going to be presenting on this.
Thank you, Joanna.
On December 17, 2019, board staff conducted an unscheduled targeted site visit to Parkview Middle School and Canyon View Prep. These are schools operated by Parkview School Incorporated. The purpose of the visit was due to one of the schools receiving a D letter grade for fiscal year 2019. During the site visit, several compliance issues were identified, resulting in the charter holder failing to meet the minimum operational performance expectations in fiscal year 2020. The multiple compliance issues led to marking the charter holder's operational dashboard and requiring submissions to bring the charter holder into compliance. Several of the issues identified deficiencies in the policies related to enrollment and attendance, required online postings related to open meeting law, and the statutorily required teacher salary posting. Outside of the issues identified during the school site visit, the charter holder was also out of compliance in its requirements to submit its annual audit reporting package timely to the board. The charter failed to timely remit contributions to the Arizona State Retirement System multiple times and failed to timely submit evidence to the board that the charter holder is current with its contributions to Arizona State Retirement System. The charter representative, Doug Pike, is here to address the board and answer any questions.
Thank you. And Mr. Pike, are you able to unmute yourself?
I think I am, as long as you're able to hear me.
We can. Thank you so much. Do you have a statement or anything you'd like to make for the board?
I do have a statement. I do want to cover several different issues with the board. I appreciate President Lee and the board members' service and willingness to hear a few items. I'd like to cover 3 items that are basically a statement that I don't believe that that the school should have been brought up on your agenda to start with, but also statements with respect to those items that have been brought up. First, I would like to note that according to Board Rule 505, titled Operational Performance Review, paragraph E states that within 10 days after completing a compliance check under subsection C, which says a compliance check may be done at any time, board staff shall provide the charter holder with written notice of any compliance issues identified. As you have been made aware in the report presented by your staff members, it was 64 days that elapsed prior to a notice from the board staff concerning these compliance issues. This is particularly important, as I'll get back to in another item. The second item that I wish to note is that in the 42-page staff report that you've received, the non-compliance report issued by the staff to the school is not the one that is in your board packet. Rather, the non-compliance report was altered and an item was removed from it. This happened more than a month later after an effort of a meeting to be held. The original staff report on non-compliance issues also identified and requested that an amendment be made to the instructional days of the school. This was not the first time that staff had reviewed the instructional day calendar for Parkview and requested an amendment. You will note on page 16 of your staff report, under the 2018 column of operational dashboard, that it does not meet was marked in the instructional days. The school was placed through a requirement at that time also to provide an amendment. I believe that the interpretation by the staff was inappropriate at that time. However, we went through the time and the cost of providing an amendment, which was noted, and a non-compliance mark was put on our dashboard. During the consideration of the first non-compliance report that was issued by your staff, I made a request several weeks into that time period to meet with your staff and to review that item again. However, I was notified by the executive director that after further review, not only was that non-compliance issue removed from my letter of correction, but also that a number of other schools also had that request by your staff removed. The question that I have particularly with respect to that is, why not go back, since the board takes a historical point of view of our operational dashboards, and remove the does not meet from our operational board for that earlier situation? The third item that I wish to point out with respect to this is not only the staff's handling of these two particular items, but the impact on the school of having such items as items number 3, the public meeting notice to comply with the open meeting law, and item number 6, the teacher posting. These items are items that have been posted, have been maintained, that no complaints have been received about, and the ADE, particularly in the case of the teacher salary posting, has received the appropriate notice. Yet these items were marked as non-compliance on the part of the school, simply because at the time that the staff checked, the website was not correctly displaying these items, even though it is part of the website. I would note that these items were not incorrect from the charter holders process, nor was there an intention that they were incorrect. And if we had been notified in a timely fashion, the website would have been corrected quicker, and these items would have been available to the public for those that were simply surfing and checking on these things. I do not consider these items to be items of non-compliance. If they were not marked as does not meet, the school would not have crossed the threshold of qualifying for this particular meeting. I'd like to address one other item with respect to the non-compliance notes. The enrollment practices, which was posted on the website and has continually, the enrollment forms have continuously been posted on there, have been there through the process several years ago, where several groups approached the board having reviewed enrollment documents. At that time, the board also directed staff to review enrollment documents. There was, during one of the many meetings that I have been a regular attendee at, the statement made that if you have not been contacted, then your enrollment documents would be correct. There was not any reason for us to believe otherwise. When the staff reviewed these, there were several items that were noted, as you can see in the compliance report. Those items have been changed and that has been posted. I'm unaware of any complaints having been made about our enrollment practices or any items brought to the attention of either the school or the board that dealt with those items. In a few cases, I believe the interpretation of the statements and the requests within documents and within the handbooks to have been misinterpreted or overstated with respect to their impact. The one that I'd like to point out was in the handbook. We had a comment about withdrawing a student from a class if a fee was not paid on time. The allegation was that that was an incorrect enrollment practice, when in fact there was no statement that the student would be withdrawn from school, nor that he would not be provided another class to attend. But it was an allegation made towards this. We've altered that slightly to make that clarification that the student would be given another class. We believe that we are making a good effort to stay in compliance and to be aware of these items. The operational dashboard is an appropriate methodology for the board to inform both the public, the board, and the school of its practices. I'm willing to answer any questions that you might have and address any of these other items. But as I said, I do not believe that these items that were not brought to the attention of the school per the state board's own rule would not have qualified us for having this does not meet. And I think that should be corrected and would ask that it be done so. Thank you.
Chair Pike, Ashley, can you or Joanna, whoever.
Yeah, I can.
Okay, thank you. Can you just tell me how many, well, I'm gonna have you maybe respond to some of those items just that he mentioned about proper procedure, but prior to you doing that, can you please let me know, what is the number? Is it 5 issues on the dashboard that bring you in front of the board? I can't remember.
Yeah, it's 6. If 6 out of 9 measures,
then that brings you.
That brings you to a does not meet the operational standard.
Okay, and it's my understanding that, well, and Joanna, actually, maybe I'll just let you respond. But I particularly wanted you to respond at least to the piece about informing the charter holder in a timely manner. It's my understanding that particularly pertaining to the website, that they were actually informed that day and actually spoke to a member of the school, the principal. In fact, I think I see that in the board packet. The board packet not only identified that was an issue, but had known about the issue, quote unquote, for a while. So I'm having a hard time understanding why it would be the board's responsibility to let a charter holder know that their website is down. But if you could maybe make some comments on that.
Certainly, President Lee. So in regards to our process for when we conduct a targeted site visit, a targeted site visit is where we actually go to the school. The charter representative is not aware when we're going to go out to the school, meaning the unscheduled. But before we go on the site visit, we actually do a website review and check for as much as we can in the website, including teacher salary posting. And we do it just based on what the statute requires. If we see that it's not there, then we will go out to the school. And usually that's done about 2 or 3 days before the site visit. Then when we conduct the site visit, then we'll share that information with the school leader that's there, the people that we speak to, and we let them know what happened. And in that case, that's what we did. We spoke with the principal. We showed him on the website, and he had indicated to us that had been like that for a while. So once we know that, then we mark that as an issue. And then when we come back and we create the report, then that's what we'll place on the report as an issue. Now, going back to the time frames for submitting the reports back to the charter representative, and this is just an example. Had we provided the report within those 10 days, as Mr. Pike had indicated by regulation, by rule, that still would have been identified as an issue that would have marked the operational dashboard. So that would not have gone away. That would have still been an issue. There really wouldn't be any other difference other than he's already in compliance with that. So now it shows as an asterisk, meaning that he's come into compliance for that particular issue. So that addresses the timeliness of that particular issue, how we process it prior to going out to a visit, what we do when we're at the visit, providing the school, I guess, to let us know, what's happened. And in that case, it just seemed by the school leader that it had been out for a while. I believe that for the other school, because we visited both schools, they have two schools under one facility that is led by one school administrator. And so I want to say that the teacher salary posting may have been placed on the other one. So I know that had happened. So I hope I answered your question regarding the teacher salary posting and the timeframes.
Yes, you did. So it's my understanding, and I'm just going to repeat it back, Joanna, so let me know if I'm correct, okay, is that there seems to be a question about the 10 days, and even if the 10 days, or even if it had been submitted within the 10 days, there would still be 6 measures before us, and it would still be on the agenda today. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct. That is correct.
Okay.
President Lee, I can address the timeframes as well. With having targeted site visits, it is something that it is one of my responsibilities within my position, as well as the work that I'm also doing with my coworker Jesse, who also manages complaints. And so there have been times, to be very honest with you, that the reports have not gone out within those 10 days. But primarily it's because during targeted site visits, many times there's additional documentation to review. And in this case, when we did look at the enrollment policies, we knew that as we started going through them, that it required us to look at those a little bit more carefully, only because some of those were violations of statute. And so we wanted to be clear on that. In regards to the reports describing issues with enrollment policies, Mr. Pike is correct. We did address an issue related to fees. However, that is not, many times our report will include areas that give a perception in regards to, and maybe in conflict with, what he is saying. So the fact that he did adjust the language so it doesn't actually is perceived as if though, if you don't do this, then you will be disenrolled or you will be withdrawn, or whatever the language may have been at the time. However, when I look at and I'm looking at the actual report that we provided in the executive summary, I don't believe that any of those issues were addressed within this particular report. What we addressed in this report were mainly those that were the violations. And so when we do this, when we do write these reports, we need to be very careful as to what violation are we citing, what was the violation. And so many times that does take a little bit longer to do.
Joanna, thank you so much for that response, and just thank you for your guys's work. I think it is important, as these are public documents, that somebody, that anybody can come back and view, that it's extremely important, like you said, that they are cited correctly, right? Like, and for the right reason. And Mr. Pike, it doesn't look like that anything would have changed had you been notified within the 10 days, that you still would be here. And looking at the enrollment processes, it seems to be very clear to me that that these were violations that needed to be fixed and addressed. And same thing in regards to your website, it does appear that it was a known issue on your campus by admission of the campus principal, that wasn't corrected and could have been corrected, prior. I have, board members, unless you have any other questions, I don't see any reason that one of you should be taken off.
President Lee.
The threshold. Yes, Mr. Pike, go for it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's inappropriate to get into a he said, she said. We did have conversation with several staff members after the meeting. I have no reason to disbelieve either side. The staff says that they were not informed. With regard to whether something should or should not appear as it does not meet, I believe that the consideration of the fact that the school had specifically made the effort and placed something on the website is directly related to whether or not they are in compliance. The issue, as pointed out, was a malfunction in the website. Whether or not we knew about it in advance and I was not informed, or whether or not the staff informed us within 10 days, does not change the issue that we complied with the posting. Second item that I would like to reiterate is that the staff was in violation of a board rule. Now, you have had several members discuss today during several considerations that even though they may feel one way or the other, there is a consistency and a correctness within the rules. I understand what you are saying to me about the need for a school to comply specifically with certain items. The question I'm asking is whether or not the board requires the staff to comply specifically with those items. I note the board president's specific vote stating that she needed to be consistent. I would ask that there be a consistency there also. If there is a board rule and if it is violated by the staff, does that have any consequence or any action that is impactful to the efforts that are being made at that time? That is what I'm pointing out, and I appreciate your indulgence for letting me make the comment.
Sure. And
President Lee.
Ashley, go for it.
Yes, if I may. So Doug and I have had conversations about this, and like I have with all of our charters, I want to make sure it's very clear that I do review staff's executive summaries, their findings, and I do have conversations with the charters about their stance on the compliance issues. And like Doug had mentioned, if there is question about whether there was a violation or not, I always want to make sure that we are upholding the law. So if there is question about that, I always want to hear the schools out. And if ultimately there isn't a violation, then I am very fair about that with taking the compliance measures off or not including it in the executive summaries. When Mr. Pike did inform me about the timing of staff not providing communication within 10 days, I did do a full review of our process at that time. And what I found is that there was a misunderstanding or with staff that under our previous processes, we were looking at a different rule for our timing. And so we were using a rule that allowed for us to respond more in a reasonable amount of time, and we're not under the rule provision for the 10-day. I believe after my review of the rule and our board process, I think Doug is correct that we at least need to be providing communication to the schools within that 10-day time frame. So I think he, to give it to him, he's absolutely correct that staff does need to respond. So I did find that issue, and thank you, Doug, for bringing that to our attention. And we have updated our processes to be consistent. But again, it was that we were operating under a different rule prior to that review. With that being said, though, I want to make sure it is very clear that with timeframes with schools, we are very fair. The schools have the ability to ask for extensions if they do not think they're going to meet the deadlines. You know, we are working with our schools very closely to make sure that they do have those flexibilities. So just want to make sure that that's very clear to the board and to Mr. Pike and the charters as well.
Yeah, thank you, Ashley. And, you know, Mr. Pike, I do want it to be clear that we absolutely heard you. I know, and made sure, you know, like Ashley said, quickly made a change to processes. Getting into the minutia of what happened with that, I don't think is necessarily appropriate, except that it has been taken care of and that they are doing that. And I don't think it negates the fact that you're here in front of the board for 6 violations. So, you know, so that doesn't negate why you're here. And so I also want to be very clear on that. The question about whether or not had your website been up, would you be before us? I think that's really the crux of the issue. Is that, I mean, if we summarized everything, is that really in short maybe the crux of the issue, Mr. Pike? Is that really what you're kind of coming before us with? Had the website been up, you would not have been in violation. And so the claim is that you did have the correct procedures in place, your team was doing it properly, there was just a technical malfunction. Is that?
I think that's clear enough. Those 2 items would not have appeared on the agenda.
Okay. So board members, I'd be curious. I think this is a little unprecedented, unless Ashley, you know of a time, you know, that the technical issue. Do we have any way of confirming that this, you know, that the website wasn't modified or changed or added? I guess that's probably part of the issue, is we don't necessarily have proof, right, that those items were on there prior.
All you would have is my comment, and I guess the other thing would be that the correction made was not that those items were posted, but rather that the website was made whole.
Correct.
President Lee,
yeah.
This is Johnson, and Mr. Pike, thank you for being here and making yourself available. This whole conversation really is quite disturbing to me. We are the schools before us because they had a targeted site visit because of poor academic performance. We have 6 things that were identified. And frankly, I am, especially as it relates to the Arizona State retirement system and other things like that, whether the website was up or whether it's their responsibility or not. I just think that we're sort of trying to turn the school's issue into the staff's issue. Staff does an amazing job, and Mr. Pike, it's interesting to me that you didn't relate that you had a discussion with Ms. Berg about how we viewed timing and you viewed timing on this 10-day thing. So this whole thing's really, you know, has dragged on longer than I think it should. I think we're here appropriately, and we should move forward with whatever action the board's going to take. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Swanson. Yeah, I think it's important that charter holders are heard and that they can, you know, bring their grievances. I think you have. I think we've responded. I think we've responded prior to this. And I think that you are here for legitimate reasons as well. With that, are there any other comments from board members? And if not, is there a motion?
President Lee, this is Hans Close.
Yes.
I'll go ahead and make a motion.
Thank you.
I move to find that Parkview School Incorporated has failed to meet the operational performance expectations set forth in the board's operational performance framework and has violated its charter, contract, and state and federal law. Further, these failures provide a sufficient basis to issue a notice of intent to revoke the charter contract of Parkview School Incorporated. However, the board is authorized to exercise its legal discretion with regard to actions taken against a charter holder that is not in compliance with its charter, other obligations to the board, and state and federal law. In an effort to bring Parkview School Incorporated into compliance, the board directs staff to work with legal counsel to develop a consent agreement that addresses the Parkview School Incorporated's non-compliance with the board's operational performance expectations, its charter, and state and federal law. The board further directs staff to bring the consent agreement back to the board for consideration at a subsequent board meeting. If the charter holder chooses not to accept the terms of the consent agreement developed by board staff, then it is the board's decision that the charter holder will be placed on a future agenda for the board to issue a notice of intent to revoke Parkview School Incorporated's charter contract for the reasons already specified.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Rice. Alexis, the roll call.
Vice President Close,
Aye.
Superintendent Hoffman,
Aye.
Mr. Mason,
Aye.
Ms. Rice,
Aye.
Mr. Swanson,
Yes.
Mr. Twist,
Aye.
Ms. Yanoff, President Lee,
Aye.
motion passes unanimously.
All right, thank you.
Why do we keep saying hi?
Okay.
Why do we keep saying hi?
All right, moving on to item K, November 15 audit deadline. Ashley, or Andrea, excuse me.
President Lee, Superintendent Hoffman, and board members. Staff is proposing that the board consider extending the fiscal year 2020 audit submission deadline from November 15th, 2020 to December 11th, 2020. Staff believes extending the deadline by approximately 4 weeks acknowledges the effect COVID-19 has had and continues to have on school operations and the fiscal year 2020 audits without unduly impeding the board's efforts to fulfill its statutory oversight responsibilities. Under the extension, charter holders that fail to submit their fiscal year 2020 audits by December 11th will be considered by the board at its December 15th meeting. I'm available for questions.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions? Board members? No.
President Lee, I think this makes a lot of sense, and as long as it doesn't create any undue burden on staff as far as being able to review and address issues, I think that this makes sense. But if there is an issue that will impact staff and their ability to do the important work they do the way it needs to be done, I would have an objection.
Yes, I agree. And staff, can you just comment on that?
Yeah, I think it will delay a little bit the work, but I think in the long run, I think the extension makes a lot of sense for both the schools, the audit firms, and the board. And so I think we'll be able to work around that.
Great. Thank you. I appreciate your guys' work on this and just your guys' flexibility on this, because I do think it's the right call for our charters, even though it probably will do a little bit more work than you're admitting to. So I appreciate that. With that, is there any other comments? And if not, is there a motion?
President Lee, this is Hans.
Yes.
I move, based on the information contained in the board materials and presented today, to extend the fiscal year 2020 audit submission deadline for financial statement audit reporting packages from November 15th, 2020 to December 11th, 2020, and direct staff to notify charter holders and their audit firms of the board's action at this meeting. With this extension, the board will consider at its December 15th, 2020 meeting charter holders that fail to submit their fiscal year 2020 audits to the board.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Alexis with the roll call.
Vice President Close,
Aye.
Superintendent Hoffman,
Aye.
Mr. Mason,
Aye.
Ms. Rice,
Aye.
Mr. Swanson,
Yes.
Mr. Twist,
Yep. Aye.
Ms. Yanoff, President Lee,
Aye.
motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to item L. Ashley.
President Lee and Superintendent Hoffman and board members, I'm bringing to you the budget proposal for the board. So each year, the board must submit to the legislature for approval of our budget for the following fiscal year. For this year, we are requesting additional money for an overhaul of our online platform. We have contracted with a contractor to do a needs assessment and evaluation to look at what our current ASBCS online does and does not do well, and then figure out the gaps and requirements for a new system. And so I have Keith here today. He has been great and phenomenal to work with, and we've been working with his team to develop this budget request for the legislature. So I'm going to hand it over to Keith, and he's going to present to you all the work that MSS has done to put this budget request together and all of the evaluation on what potential platforms are out there for us.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Ashley. I'm assuming everybody can hear me okay?
Yes.
So if you want to, Ashley, are you doing the slides or is somebody else running the slides?
Dan is doing them, but he'll click through as you talk.
You want to just jump ahead one, Dan? That'd be great. Thanks. Just a real quick background on our company. MSS has been in the Valley for a little over 30 years now, doing basically this type of work, which is taking organizations, agencies, companies, and helping them through their digital transformation journey. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time here other than to let you guys know we've done a lot of this. And actually, we're very appreciative of getting brought in at this point in a project. Before we get too far down the road, it really makes a big difference to lay the strategy out correctly up front. And it's been a pleasure working with the board to do this project. So let's jump in, Dan, to the next one, and we'll talk about exactly what we did. Oh, this is an automated one. So we basically spent the last 2 months doing 2 separate small engagements with the board. The first one was a needs assessment and online platform evaluation. So we went through a process to understand what exactly the online platform needed to do, how well it currently does those things, and then identify kind of next steps in that roadmap. The second piece that we spent most of July on was looking at, okay, so now that we know what our roadmap looks like, what do we think it's going to cost to get there, and how do we put together a budget justification? So Dan, if you want to take us into the next one, we'll talk a little bit about the specifics around the needs assessment. So the way we do needs assessments is basically we talk to the experts, which are the people on the board that do the work every day. It's all the staff members. So we leverage their expertise and we just pull it out in a way that allows us to document it and then match it up to ultimately to software or custom service providers down the road for that to fulfill those business requirements. So we went through a number of surveys and stakeholder interviews and did some process mapping to really understand the business that the board is doing. And then based on that, we came out with about 170 total system requirements, 128 of which were considered must-have. So as we go through that requirement process, we take a step back, we categorize everything to make sure there's no duplication, and then we prioritize based on what are the must-haves, what are the nice-to-haves, et cetera, so that as you're doing your evaluation down the road, you can make a good selection of the software. Then the next thing we did is a gap analysis. We took those requirements we put together and we ran them back against what the current software can do. And unfortunately, I think what we found is that when it comes to fully met requirements, it can't do very many of them. So what that means is the staff is currently, with the current online platform, is doing a lot of workarounds. Those workarounds translate into ultimately additional resources to do those additional steps where the automation isn't really being leveraged to its fullest. So, I think, the net finding on this one is, the current platform is nowhere near what the board needs to be efficient and effective in fulfilling their responsibilities. So we've also identified a number of additional risks for the continued use of the system. And again, the goal of this piece is to help build a business case around saying, does it make sense to spend the money necessary to close these gaps? And then finally, we did a high-level roadmap. And if you look on this diagram, the first the first two columns are really the work we've done to this point. So and then after that, what we would recommend, and this is a pretty typical process, is once you get the budget approved, you're going to do a vendor selection and contract negotiation to find the right system at the right price, get all of the contracts aligned, and then you will go through an implementation process, basically putting in the software, configuring it correctly, making sure all the users know how to use it, making sure all the processes are aligned around it. And then once it's implemented, how do we support it going forward? So this is a pretty generic roadmap. That's pretty typical of what you'll see coming out of these. The most important piece of all the work we did in that first engagement is getting the requirements right. We have a organization called Infotech Research Group that we work with for a lot of our research stuff. And they've done studies that about 70% of projects that fail tend to fail because they didn't do the requirements right up front. So the fact that Ashley, brought somebody in to help do that and just to lay that solid foundation is critical. Next slide, Dan. Okay, so now that we had requirements, we said, okay, well, so now let's put our budget request together. So there's two sides of that. One side of that is obviously what are the benefits we're going to get. We use the gap analysis to document those items. The other side of it is to understand what does the market look like for these types of products. Obviously, charter school authorizers is not something where there's thousands of them out there, and so there's going to be tons of software out there to select from. So we actually talked to a number of the other authorizers across the country to understand what they were using. There's only a couple that, technically only one that's close to the size of Arizona's, and that's Texas. And Texas is built their own custom site, but in our conversations with them, they're finding a lot of challenges with that site too, even though it was a custom site. There's very few, which I'm sure you're all aware of, there's very few authorizers in the country that do the volume of schools that are done here in Arizona. So you're not going to find a lot of vendors that are perfect fits for that. So we did identify there are two key vendors in the market, Epicenter and Charter Tools. They're primarily targeted at the smaller authorizers, and I think that's mostly based on the volume of what's out there. And so what we found is that especially for authorizers the size of Arizona, there's a lot of custom solutions, and if it's not custom, it's Epicenter. So those are kind of the two solutions. So we looked at those things in light of, okay, what's out there and what is it going to cost us to implement one of those solutions. Next slide, Dan. So these are the potential opportunities that we came up with out of that assessment. So Epicenter and Charter Tools, we talked about, those are, I'll say, software vendors that provide a off-the-shelf solution that's configurable to meet the needs of the Arizona board. There's also custom solution providers. ThoughtSpan's a little bit of a hybrid. They do a lot of licensing and permitting work. That's what their software is designed to do. We have worked with them in the past, so we wanted to at least talk to them and see what they thought. Their software can actually do a lot of what's needed. What we're concerned about with them a little bit is the size of the company, and can it handle the changes and the support that would be necessary going forward in a market that's a lot smaller than the market they're used to working with permitting and licensing. And then the last two options down there, we looked at custom solution providers to say, here's our requirements. Give us a ballpark of what you think it might cost to do this. And again, the whole purpose of this was to come up with a range of numbers that potentially would cost for the software side of this over a 5-year period. We do everything based on a 5-year total cost of ownership, just to give a better perspective on what your costs are really going to be. Sometimes you'll run into situations where you think it's you had a big cost in the first year, you spent that money, but you anticipated it was going to be less over time, and it doesn't turn out that way. Or vice versa, you get something that looks really cheap up front, but then you end up spending a ton of money maintaining it. So we try and look at it over 5 years to give you a good picture of what it's going to look like. So out of this, we kind of looked at this and said, well, we think Epicenter is kind of a good midpoint to base the budget on. And the reason is a couple. One, it is a off-the-shelf package. So that comes with some inherent value that as far as maintenance after it's up and running versus a custom solution. It's somewhere in the middle of what our total range of estimates were received. So it's really a good place to say, look, we don't want to get ourselves in a position where we recommend and budget based on the lowest number and find out a year from now that that company's not available or that software's changed prices, or and we don't want to over budget and run the risk of not getting something approved because we picked the highest number. So we tend to recommend going with something in the middle that looks like it's feasible in the market and has a reasonable number of installed already. So the actual business justification was based on kind of Epicenter as our model. So here is kind of what we estimated for the 5-year window from a budget planning perspective. And so it's a little bit more upfront. That's because there's implementation costs. We've worked with Asset and the governor's office around understanding this third-party oversight, and that's a role we're very familiar with because it tends to be where we fit into projects. It's a critical piece of project success, and I know Asset is recommending that for all of their projects going forward. So we built a cost in for that, as well as the software implementation, which again is a little bit higher up front because you have data conversions to deal with from your old software, and then an ongoing maintenance price. The one thing I think that, once you get down the road and you start actually looking at making a decision between a custom vendor or an off-the-shelf product, it's important to keep in mind those years 2, 3, 4, and 5 after you've done the implementation, because custom software comes with custom maintenance, which you're either going to have to sign a maintenance contract to get or pay for ad hoc, and it can really inflate your costs down the road versus an off-the-shelf, especially a software as a services based model, is more like a subscription that you can kind of budget. You know what your costs are. It's basically built into your contract, and you get all your support and upgrades through that. So that was the level of detail that went into the budget request. I know there's a fairly large document that we delivered out of this as far as the part of the budget justification. I'm sure Ashley could speak to if she wants to. So that was, but that's basically, we put the benefits together with these costs to drive a business justification out of the whole thing. So it's basically a business case is what came out of the last 2 months' work.
So President Lee, Keith is absolutely correct. This justification, I think, was really well done. It was done in collaboration with the governor's office, education office, and his budgeting office, along with Asset, who would help us in the implementation and transitioning to this or a new platform. So I think I'm really confident with the materials and the documentation that we have behind it. But like Keith had said, what we're asking today for the board's approval is to consider requesting roughly $550,000 in year 1, and then it would be continuing general appropriations for about $302,000 thereafter. And that would support the ongoing online platform.
Ashley?
Yes.
President Lee, it's Jim Swanson. I just want to state a couple things. One is, I, without knowing much about what you guys have done, 100% agree with the decision to not build your own. I think that would be high risk. Second, I would say that a technology platform that we need to move us forward is an imperative. If you look at what I believe will be the growth in charters over the next several years, and the pressure we're going to have on our staff, I think that taking a look at how we do our business is very appropriate, and I commend the staff for taking this on, because these projects are very hard and they're not fun. And you will have a lot of frustration, but hopefully in the end you'll get where you want to be. And then lastly, Keith, just a question. There's nothing in here for any hardware, or is this all cloud-based, or does the state of Arizona deal with that side of it? Just don't know.
No, the assumption was, because this is how Epicenter works, that it's a software as a service model. And so in the estimates that we got for custom, there was numbers involved in that for the hardware piece. The challenge on that, again, like you say, is if you choose to go that direction, then you do own that responsibility for not just, maintaining the software, but also the hardware that it runs on. You do have opportunities to work with Asset to put it in one of the state data centers, or you could also work with Asset to put it in the cloud, running on its own instance in the cloud. But ideally, for an organization the size of the Board of Charter Schools, off the shelf is, if you can find something that really meets your needs, that's the best way to go, because you're not really large enough to want to have to deal with all the headaches that go with maintenance of hardware and software and the support of those things. So
totally agree.
Yeah, and I just want to say thank you. I know I was part of the process of getting, just kind of interviewed on what our needs assessment was, and it was more than thorough. You guys, really thought about questions that I hadn't thought about as a board member, needs that I didn't know that I needed until you brought them up. And so I just want to appreciate all the effort that the board staff did, Ashley, and just going through this. I feel very confident that this was a thorough process, that what's being presented to us is needed. We need this, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, but we need this to happen so we can have, service our charter community and have that transparency and that connection that with ADE that we've been wanting and really needing for the community as well. So thank you. This sounds good to me. Board members, are there any other questions about this for Ashley or Keith? Okay. No, this was great, Keith. Thank you for your time and again, the presentation. This was wonderful. Ashley, we don't need a motion on this. Is that correct? Because it's my understanding that you will present this as next steps, for our budget when we do the budget requests.
That is correct, but if you would like to make a motion, you can, but I don't need a motion to move it forward.
Okay, perfect. Then we will not do a motion, but just thank you guys so much. And yeah, that was great. Okay, moving on to item M, schedule and planning, evaluating charters pursuant to executive orders 2020-41 and 2020-51. Rachel.
Okay. The governor issued Executive Order 2020-41, allowing charter schools without an approved Arizona online instruction program the flexibility to provide distance learning opportunities to students in fiscal year 2021 with the submission of a distance learning plan, or DLP. Executive Order 2020-41 requires that the schedule to evaluate DLPs be adopted by the Arizona State Board for Charter Schools by September 1st of 2020. The board's executive director has been clear in messaging to schools that although the executive orders do not require an evaluation of all charters, that each charter would receive an evaluation. This is to ensure that the board understands what each charter is doing this school year and to assist schools in any way possible. In order to review each school's implementation of the submitted DLP and to ensure compliance with requirements in Executive Order 2020-51, board staff will incorporate these reviews into already established processes and site visits for the 2020-2021 school year. Board staff does hope to review all schools by February. And I'm available for any questions if you have them.
I don't have any. I just, again, commend you guys for getting the time to do all of this and getting this together. I know you guys have a lot to do this year. And so I appreciate you coming up with a plan that will ensure, you know, that this is being upheld, that the distance learning plans are being upheld. Board members, are there any questions for Rachel? Okay. And Rachel, it's my understanding we also do not need a motion on this. I just want to be.
I will defer to Ashley on that.
I should have asked that. Yes, Ashley, do we need a motion for this or can we?
I would prefer a motion on this.
Okay, perfect. Hans, do you have a motion for us?
Sure. I move based on the information contained in the board materials and presented today to approve the proposed schedule and plan for evaluating distance learning plans during FY 2021.
I'll go ahead and second that. And if Alexis, you could do the roll call.
Vice President Close,
Aye.
Superintendent Hoffman,
Aye.
Mr. Mason, Ms. Rice,
Aye.
Mr. Swanson.
Just a comment, great job staff on dealing with this issue. It's an important one that we're going to have to be dealing with often. So good job and aye.
Mr. Twist,
Likewise, thank you. Aye.
Ms. Yana, President Lee.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
All right, thank you. Moving on to item N, compliance statement of insurances.
Blah, blah.
Sorry, Serena.
All right. Board staff, in an effort to assist charter schools in maintaining compliance, has developed a compliance statement of assurances form for charters to complete annually. The compliance statement of assurances is a form that will be annually updated and released by the board, which will include all operational compliance measures as well as new legislative mandates and board requirements to the greatest extent possible. At least once a year, charter holders will acknowledge and agree to maintain compliance with the various requirements. Due to staff capacity and resources, board staff is currently unable to visit every school in the portfolio yearly. Therefore, the compliance statement of assurances will serve to ensure that every school is aware of their compliance requirements and acknowledge that they are in compliance. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Serena. No, I think this is great. I think just even having a statement of insurances for charters to review, I know I briefly spoke to Ashley when talking about this, I think is actually helpful to the charter community, just to let them know, you know, points to check, right, when we're not necessarily on an on-site visit. So I think that this is great. And I appreciate, you know, the time that it took to do this. Board members, are there any questions about this? Okay, if not, is there a motion?
President Lee, this is Hans. I move based on the information contained in the board materials and presented today to approve the compliance statement of assurances document to be released to and submitted by all charters or a minimum annually. At a minimum annually, sorry.
And I'll go ahead and second that. And then Alexis, will you do the roll call?
Vice President Close,
Aye.
Superintendent Hoffman,
Aye.
Mr. Mason,
Aye.
Ms. Rice,
Aye.
Mr. Swanson,
Aye.
Mr. Twist,
Aye.
Ms. Yana, President Lee.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. All right, Ashley, if you'll close us out.
Of course. Well, at this time, President Lee and board members, I don't have anything else to report, but I'd be happy to answer any questions that any other board members may have.
Perfect. When's our next agenda or our next meeting?
Let me look really quick. It is September 14th.
Perfect.
And I do want to make sure to note, based on the deadline being changed for the audits, we will have our December meeting on the 15th. So typically we reserve 2 days in December to review the new charter application. So we reserve a Monday and a Tuesday. So for this year, we reserved December 14th and 15th. But this year we will likely just have a meeting on Tuesday, December 15th.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you so much. All right.
Board members, are there any other questions? That may have?
President Lee
Yes.
and Ashley, if I may, perhaps also throw this at the superintendent. I have been reading with some interest on the PPP loans and charter schools that people haven't seen. It's been reported that charter schools in Arizona received over $100 million with PPP loans. Some question being raised as to whether those are legitimate or legal for schools to get. I do understand, I believe that the department and maybe the Attorney General's office are looking into questions regarding that. I do want to know, make sure that that staff and the board is aware of this, and that perhaps staff will take some time at the next meeting to debrief us on what they've learned or understood about these loans. And then just goes into my continued, as I've learned more and more about charters, understanding the little bit of concern about the opaqueness and transparency of the CMOs and the EMOs and where those dollars are going and how they're being used. And while I am very strongly a proponent of outcomes and how we are getting our students educated, I also do have a great deal of concern on where our tax dollars are going, how they're being spent, and to whose benefit they're going to. So I just want to make sure that the board has attention or is aware of this issue, and that I'd like to hear more about it in the future.
Okay.
President Lee, Member Swans, I'm happy to report back to the board.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Swanson. Thank you, Ashley. And I actually had one other thing, Ashley. I'd like to put some discussion out there as well in regards to our recommendations for schools that don't fit the traditional model. Just kind of going back over, and I wish I would have brought that up on this item agenda. It seems that those schools are are disproportionately affected, I think, when we start talking about we're including all K schools, all high schools in their data. And I think it doesn't give us a good picture of what's really happening with the school. So I don't know if there's something, I don't have a solution for you. Typically I like to give a solution if I'm bringing up an issue, but I think more if we can have some discussion on, I think we have more and more schools that fit a non-traditional model of how we can look at their data that actually best represents their data, whether that's breaking up their junior high and high school or whatever that looks like. I'd like to just, have that for further discussion.
I'm happy to bring something back to the board regarding additional data that we can provide to the board.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Board members, are there anything else for Ashley? Okay. All right. Well, then with that, we are adjourned. Thank you everybody for your time. We appreciate it. Have a great day, guys.
Thank you.